The fluorescent lights of the hospital blurred, casting long, distorted shadows as I finally staggered out. It had been an 18-hour shift, a brutal marathon of life and death, leaving me utterly spent. My body ached with a deep, pervasive fatigue that felt less like simple tiredness and more like a hollowness in my very bones, a weariness that settled behind my eyes and in the empty space where joy was meant to reside. I had shattered a rib performing chest compressions on a young boy whose parents waited, oblivious, just outside the emergency room. I had pronounced 3 people dead, yet miraculously, I had brought 2 back from the precipice. The lingering scent of antiseptic clung to my skin, a testament to the dried blood on my sleeves. All I craved, all I desperately needed, was a long, hot shower, a quiet meal, and at least 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep before the cycle began anew. That was it. My entire wish list, a testament to the minimalist desires of a perpetually exhausted medical resident. But as I pulled into the familiar driveway, my key refused to turn in the lock. My brain, dulled by exhaustion, struggled to process this simple fact. I twisted it again, jiggled it, even stared at the key as if it might offer an apology for its sudden malfunction. Then, with a creak that sounded ominous in the pre-dawn stillness, the door opened. There stood Lisa, my stepmother, a vision of disheveled defiance in yoga pants and a wine-stained tank top. Her phone was clutched in one hand, an air of entitlement radiating from her posture. "Oh," she drawled, her voice lacking any genuine surprise, as if my return was a minor, forgettable detail. "You're back early." Behind her, the scene within my home was equally infuriating. My stepsister, Mahina, lounged casually on my couch, swiping through TikTok, completely oblivious to my presence, as if she were the rightful owner of the space. Her partner, a man who hadn't held a job since he moved in, was halfway through a bag of chips that I had purchased. The audacity was breathtaking. "The key doesn't work," I stated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Lisa's response was delivered with a smug, almost rehearsed nonchalance that sent a chill down my spine. "Right," she said, a flicker of something triumphant in her eyes. "We changed the locks. Rent's gone up. You want to stay here? It's $26,000 back rent plus utilities. Your sister needs a vacation. And frankly, you're a doctor. You can afford it." The words hung in the air, dripping with an arrogance that suggested she believed she was doing me a favor. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my duffel bag a dead weight in my hand, my sneakers seemingly glued to the welcome mat. I didn't utter a word for a long moment, just stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time in years. My father had married Lisa when I was still trying to navigate the awkwardness of learning how to shave. She was the one who had insisted I call her Lisa because stepmom sounded too official, yet she had never, not once, treated me like a member of her family. "Did Dad approve this?" I finally managed to ask, a flicker of disbelief in my voice. She smirked, a cruel, knowing smile. "Your father's overseas. This is my house. When he's gone, I make the rules." I peered past her into the living room. My old textbooks were still stacked on the floor, precisely where I'd left them. My name was still on many of the utility invoices, bills I had dutifully paid just last month. "Understood," I said, the single word cutting through the charged atmosphere. I nodded once, a gesture of quiet resolve, then turned and walked back to my car. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just drove away into the night, the pain in my chest far greater than any physical ache from my demanding shift. That night, I found myself in the sterile confines of the hospital's call room, trying to find sleep on a plastic mattress covered by a scratchy blanket that reeked of disinfectant. While I tossed and turned, sleeping fitfully and briefly, I imagined them celebrating, probably toasted with cheap boxed wine to their brilliant plan of extortion. Perhaps Mahina even posted about it online, a self-righteous TikTok with a petulant caption about how freeloaders can't receive free rides forever. What they didn't realize, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that I had been anticipating this very moment for years. My father, a man of quiet foresight, had purchased the house before he ever met Lisa. He owned it outright, and in a move that spoke volumes about his understanding of Lisa's character, he had quietly placed it in a trust, transferring full ownership to me when I turned 21. "Just in case," he had told me, his voice firm, "I want you to be protected no matter what." I had never boasted about it, never used it as leverage against Lisa or Mahina. I had continued to pay the bills, continued to play nice, harboring a naive hope that one day they would finally treat me like family. But instead, they had changed the locks and demanded $26,000. So, I gave them 30 days to go. The next morning, while they were likely still deep in their hangovers and delusions of grandeur, I drove back to the house. I knocked once, then carefully placed a formal eviction notice, stapled to a copy of the property deed bearing my name, on the doormat, where it would be impossible to miss. Then, I parked down the street and waited. 15 minutes later, precisely on schedule, Lisa had a routine of checking the front step around 9:30 a.m. like clockwork. The front door creaked open. There she was, in fuzzy slippers, clutching a "Number One Mom" mug with peeling glitter. She bent down, picked up the letter, opened it, and then screamed. Not a polite gasp, not a small cry of surprise. A full-throated, soul-shaking scream, the kind that indicates someone has died. Lights flickered on across the street. Dogs began to bark. Curtains twitched. From the safety of my car, I watched her expression contort through a terrifying kaleidoscope of rage, panic, and confusion, as if someone had just told her the world was ending. She shrieked for Mahina, who stumbled outside, squinting in the harsh sunlight. Mahina took one look at the page and started shrieking too. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I just waited, because this was only the beginning. Their reactions were predictable. My phone was immediately flooded with calls and texts, a relentless barrage of accusations and threats. "We're going to call a lawyer," she told me later in a voicemail. "This is fake. You had this forged. You think you're clever, but you're not." Then came the texts. "How could you do this to us? This is betrayal after everything we gave you. Your father will hear about this." I didn't respond because the house was never theirs. They just never imagined the day I would stop pretending. In the meantime, I crashed with Jordan, a friend from medical school, the kind of guy who always has protein powder in his blender and never asks too many questions. I gave him the bare minimum. Family problems, temporary issue. He offered me his spare room, a blanket, and a dry, "Cool, just don't steal my socks." The calls, however, did not stop. Lisa, Mahina, even Mahina's unemployed partner, they all took turns on the guilt carousel. "You're really going to kick out your own family? We cared for you when no one else did, after everything we have given you." The irony was almost comical. I strained my brain, searching for a single instance where Lisa had offered me something without strings attached, a side-eye or a backhanded comment, unless you counted nervousness, which she gave freely. I ignored the calls, letting the texts pile up. I expected them to rage for a few days and then fall silent. I was wrong. Lisa, ever the tactician, changed tactics. 2 days later, a mysterious Facebook post appeared. It is a sad day when someone you have raised turns their back on you. Some individuals have forgotten who fed them all these years. Subtle. Truly Pulitzer-worthy content. Within hours, her high school friends were leaving comments with prayer hands and wine emojis. Mahina chimed in with a TikTok, complete with a sad face and a popular audio clip for added flavor. POV, your brother evicts you because you asked him to pay rent for once in his life. Texts started pouring in from extended family members I hadn't heard from in years. Is everything fine with Lisa? She says you're being aggressive. She mentioned the lawyers. What's happening? I didn't respond to those either. Instead, I mailed a folder to my lawyer, copies of the trust deed, the property transfer, the eviction notice, and screenshots of Lisa's Facebook post and Mahina's TikTok. Then, I created a new folder on my computer, ominously labeled Proof, and began meticulously storing everything. They were spiraling out of control, and I was documenting every single step. Several days after receiving the initial letter, Lisa called again. This time, I picked up. "Are you really doing this?" she shrieked, her voice skipping high with disbelief. "I am," I confirmed calmly. "You're going to regret it. This house was a gift for this family. It was a gift for me," I retorted, emphasizing the word. "Literally. Check the deed." She blurted out something about moral rights and betrayal, then declared she would talk to my father. "Go ahead," I told her, my voice laced with a subtle hint of satisfaction. "He'll be home shortly. Please wait. I'm looking forward to it." Then I hung up. The truth was, I had already spoken to him. Dad had called me the night the eviction notice went out. He sounded exhausted, not confused or angry, just quiet. "I figured it would come to this," he admitted. "Did you know?" I asked, surprised by his foresight. "I didn't realize they'd lock you out, but I knew they were pushing you too hard." "I've been hearing stuff." It turned out he had been hearing things through the grapevine. Mutual friends, neighbors, people who had seen their online posts and contacted him with worry. Initially, he refused to believe it, but the more he heard, the clearer things became. They weren't just ungrateful, they were aggressively trying to push me away. He let me know he was by my side. He didn't say anything else, just, "Please email me the documentation, I'll handle it." I believed him, but Lisa clearly did not. She assumed she could still lie her way through this. A week before the eviction deadline, I received another defiant text. "We aren't leaving. This is not legal. I'm his wife. That house is half mine." That's when I sent the second official letter, this one via certified mail from my lawyer. It explained the trust. It clarified that the house was my father's distinct property, purchased prior to his marriage, and that he had complete legal authority to give it to me. The documents were clean, the trust was airtight, there were no loopholes, no errors, just facts. I anticipated silence. Instead, they doubled down. Mahina created another TikTok. This time, she was crying on video, claiming her nasty brother was dumping them on the street. Lisa shared another dramatic Facebook status. "Some people forget where they are from. We gave him everything. Now he wants us homeless." I took a screenshot, adding it to my proof folder. That same day, I received a call from one of my neighbors, a sweet, elderly woman who used to bake cookies for us when we were youngsters. "They've been telling people you forged the deed," she explained, her voice trembling with fright. "That's fine," I responded, my voice calm. "I'm not here to win Facebook. I'm here to recover my home." Then came the cherry on top. 3 days before the deadline, after a long shift, I returned to my car and discovered a piece of paper glued to the windshield. A printed note, sloppily typed. "If you go through with this, we will make sure everyone knows who you truly are. Don't test us." No signature, just pure cowardice and desperation. I smiled. I took a photograph. I added it to the folder because that's the thing about threats. When you've lost your patience, your tranquility, and your tolerance, there's nothing else to threaten. Allow them to talk. Let them post. Let them yell. I had the deed. I had the law. And most significantly, I'd had enough. The eviction deadline arrived on a Thursday. I didn't sleep the night before, not because I was nervous, but because I was ready. It was that unique state of readiness, where your chest tightens and your thoughts are laser-focused. I had all the documents printed, my attorney was on standby, and my patience was buried deep beneath 6 years of their passive aggression and overt hostility. Of course, they hadn't packed. The drapes were still drawn. Mahina's boyfriend's automobile remained in the driveway. Someone had even left a pizza box on the porch, as if that would somehow scare me away. At precisely 10:00 a.m., I arrived. I wasn't wearing scrubs, nor was I fresh off a shift. I had taken the day off, dressed in a crisp button-down shirt, and even bothered to comb my hair. If they were going to regard me as the villain, I might as well look presentable. I knocked once. Lisa answered, makeup free, arms crossed defensively. She didn't seem surprised to see me, just arrogant. "We're not leaving," she declared, her voice flat. "Then this will be the last time I ask nicely," I replied, holding up a copy of the deed. "Do you believe you can bully your way into your father's house? It's not his house. It is mine. You have 30 minutes. She let out a short, derisive laugh. "Do you really believe you can kick out your own family?" she scoffed. I actually chuckled then, a dry, humorless sound. "It's already done. The documents were submitted many weeks ago. You've ignored every deadline." "Whoa." Mahina approached the door, her eyes swollen as if she hadn't slept, or perhaps had just finished her third tantrum of the morning. "It's illegal! You're throwing us into the street," she wailed. "No," I replied, my voice steady. "You decided not to leave. I gave you every chance." She looked frantically behind her. "We called Dad. He is on his way." "Good," I said, a flicker of satisfaction in my eyes. "I hope he arrives before the sheriff does." Right on cue, a car drew up to the curb. My father strolled out, looking tanned and a little slower than I remembered. But his presence remained dominating. Even in a cardigan, the aura of a man with military history remained. He started up the path and looked at me first. Not Lisa, not Mahina. Me. "Have you got a minute?" We took a step back, just enough so the others couldn't hear. "I read everything," he explained, his voice tired. "All documents, each message you forwarded. I am sorry it came to this. I should have arrived home sooner." "It is handled," I replied. "Mostly." He nodded, then handed me an envelope. "What is this?" I asked, my brow furrowing. "Divorce papers," he stated. "I filed them overseas. This is only a notarized confirmation." I looked at the envelope in my hand, then back at him, a knot forming in my stomach. "She never cared about this family," he told me, his voice low. "She valued control, about appearances, about bleeding you dry. I noticed it too late, but I see it now." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Then softly, almost sheepishly, he added, "I met someone overseas. She is kind, gentle. She reminds me of your mother in ways that make me feel like myself again." I blinked hard, the unexpected confession catching me off guard. "I'm not replacing her," he clarified hastily. "But I think I deserve happiness too." "You do," I said, a genuine smile finally touching my lips. We turned back to the house. Lisa and Mahina were now on the porch, eyeing us like hawks, circling their final line of protection. My father walked up first, his demeanor calm, his voice firm. "I know everything," he stated. Lisa blinked, speechless. "Everything. The lies, the posts, the threats. How you treated my son. I have nothing more to say to you." Mahina opened her mouth, likely about to launch into another dramatic monologue, but he cut her short. "This is not your house. It never was. Pack your belongings now." Lisa grabbed his arm, desperation in her voice. "Are you going to toss us away after all these years?" He shook her off gently. "You threw yourself away." Mahina turned to me, her face contorted with desperate anger. "You can't just—" "I can!" And I did. I did not raise my voice. I did not flinch. I just stood there, watching as the two people who had once scoffed at my tiredness and called it weakness slowly realized that I wasn't tired any longer. I was finished. They attempted to stall, attempted to protest. They said they needed more time. That was unfair. That I had ruined everything. But in the end, they packed. Lisa went first, tossing items haphazardly into garbage bags, muttering about lawyers and revenge. Mahina stormed around the house for hours, banging cabinets and crying on phone calls that clearly weren't going her way. By sundown, the home was silent. By midnight, it was truly mine again. I moved from room to room, barefoot, all the lights on. Not because I had to see, but because I could. For the first time in years, the space did not feel like a trap. It felt like home. There was no lingering stress in the walls, no pretense of phony grins at the dinner table. There was no guilt for simply existing. Just silence. Just peace. I brewed coffee at 2 a.m., knowing no one would complain about the noise. I stood on the porch, a shawl wrapped around my shoulders, and observed the street Lisa used to call her kingdom. It appeared smaller now, less menacing, like something I had finally outgrown. And when I looked back, I didn't see any ghosts of old arguments or half-swallowed wrath. I saw possibilities, clean floors, empty walls. There is space to breathe. My residence, my rules, my tranquility. It's been 6 months since then. Mahina has moved in with her boyfriend's parents, but from what I've heard, that didn't last long. They reportedly kicked both of them out after a few weeks due to unpaid bills, a terrible attitude, and yelling at Xbox gamers all night. Lisa attempted to sue, but she lost. Then she tried to guilt-trip my father, but that didn't work either. He now lives full-time overseas, happier and healthier, with someone who truly respects him. He informed me last month that he hasn't felt so serene in decades. As for me, I still work lengthy shifts. But now when I get home, the key works. The refrigerator is mine. The quiet is mine. Nobody begs for money. No one slams doors. Nobody thinks I owe them anything just for being alive. Some evenings, I still find myself waiting for the next demand, as if I'm programmed to expect it, but it never arrives. They are gone. And I am free. Was it too much? Have I gone too far? Would you have done the same? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of family drama, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Sleepless Stories. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next drama-filled episode. Story 2. The Silent Severance. You never truly expect your own family to stab you in the back. Not intentionally, at least. You grow up believing that blood means something, that it fosters an implicit, unbreakable loyalty. Yet it can also make individuals feel entitled to take even more from you. And when they finally run out of ways to exploit you, they often turn on you as if you are the problem. My sister, Odora, is 2 years my junior. Like most siblings, we were incredibly close as children. But something shifted the moment she married Ryan. It was a slow change at first, then all at once. Ryan, a man who believes the job market is terrible and that companies are unwilling to recruit someone with vision, hasn't held a job in 5 years. He'll start projects, get bored, and quit long before they could ever generate an actual paycheck. Meanwhile, Odora doesn't work either. Sure, she has 2 children, but that has never deterred others from employment. It's not that they can't work, they simply don't want to. When their second child was born, and they were teetering on the edge of eviction, I didn't wait for them to ask for assistance. I stepped in. I reminded myself that this is what family does. I began donating $650 every week, without fail. There were no conditions, no reminders. I never once threw it in their faces. My wife wasn't thrilled about it, but she trusted me to do what felt right, and she didn't argue. Initially, they were grateful, or at least they tried to be. But some people's thankfulness has a shelf life. It wasn't long before Odora started making subtle remarks. She'd say things like, "Some people don't understand what real struggle looks like." She'd tell me how fortunate I was to have a career that allowed me to play hero. She'd roll her eyes when I shared vacation photos. Once, at a BBQ, she even called my wife spoiled because we had purchased a new automobile. Yet, whenever she needed something, I was the first person she texted. Rent is short this month. The car battery died. Medical bills. Baby formula. I paid for everything. I constantly reminded myself that regardless of what she said, she was my sister. This is what you do for your family. Then came dinner. It was a typical Saturday night at my parents' house. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, children running around. My mother was talking about her garden. My father had the game on low in the background. Everything was perfectly normal until it wasn't. We were halfway through dessert when Odora calmly set down her fork and peered across the table at me. "You're not helping enough," she remarked, her voice chillingly even. "Don't be stingy." I blinked, assuming she was joking. I waited for someone else to chuckle. No one did. My dad then said, without looking up from his plate, "Well, she's not wrong." At that precise moment, everything inside me went silent. It was as if one part of me simply turned off, and another, colder, more resolute part came online. I looked at the very people I had spent my entire life attempting to assist and encourage, and they looked at me as if I hadn't accomplished enough. So, I grinned, a wide, almost terrifying smile, and said, "Then live without my money." My wife didn't respond. She just quietly rose with me. We gathered our children and departed. I didn't say anything while driving home. Instead, I opened my phone and began canceling everything. I terminated the weekly transfers. I canceled their rent payments. I closed all shared accounts. I cut off the shopping card they used every month as if it were their own. I was finished. Ryan arrived outside my house the next morning at 7:42 a.m. No call, no text. He simply showed up and began hammering on my front door as if it were a matter of life and death. He wasn't angry, he was desperate. He explained that they couldn't pay their rent, that their landlord had already called, and that they didn't even have enough gas to travel to the food bank. Odora sat in the van behind him. I could hear her crying even though the door was closed. She wasn't asking, she was demanding. She told me that I couldn't do this to them, that I had obligations. She called me selfish. And that was only the beginning of what quickly escalated into a full-fledged conflict. I did not open the door that morning. I stood behind it and listened as Ryan's voice changed from pleading to outright panic. I knew that if I opened the door even slightly, he'd launch into another sob story, and the old me would give in. That was the old me, the one who still believed people were interested in something other than what I could provide them. So, I let him knock. Then, I let him go. 3 hours later, my mother called. I didn't respond. Then followed the texts. She spoke first, followed by Odora. My father didn't text. He never does. But I saw that he had seen my WhatsApp status, so I knew he was aware. The messages started off pleasant. "We need to talk. Don't do anything rash. This is family." Then the tone changed. "How could you let your niece and nephew go hungry? Your sister is in tears. Is that what you want? You're punishing children for adult problems. Shame on you!" It was like witnessing someone have a public tantrum in real time. The interesting thing was that none of them asked me what I needed. No one inquired, "Are you okay?" No one questioned why I cut them off. They already knew. By Tuesday, calls were flowing in from all directions. My uncle texted me. A cousin I hadn't seen in 2 years messaged me and asked what was going on. Odora had given everyone a skewed version of events, depicting me as a cold-hearted sibling who had abruptly abandoned the family. She repeatedly used that phrase, abandoning us. I ignored it all. That was until my mother showed up at my office. She never visits me at work, ever. I was in the middle of a project meeting when my receptionist came in and informed me that there was a woman present who claimed to be my mother. I stepped outside. There she sat in the waiting area, arms crossed, as if I had just sold family secrets to a tabloid. She didn't ask to sit down. She did not ask if I had time. She just got right into it. "You embarrassed Odora. You hurt her children. She's your sister, Drake." I kept my voice calm. "You all sat there while she called me stingy. You all agreed with her, after everything." She looked at me as if I was speaking a different language. "She's struggling," she remarked. "She's not herself." "And what about me?" I inquired. "Am I not allowed to get tired? To stop being a human ATM?" She said, "You're better off than them." I nodded. I then told her the truth. This was not about money. It was about disrespect. I stated that I was not going to finance those who despised me for possessing what they decided not to earn. She did not say anything after that. She simply stood up and walked out. She did not even say goodbye. That night, Odora sent me a fresh message. There was no hi or can we talk, only this. You should fix this, Drake. You will not be pleased with the outcome if you do not. I stared at it for quite a while. Then I blocked her. She was correct about one thing. She was not going to enjoy what happened next. By Thursday, the stillness seemed strange. No calls, no texts, just silence. That wasn't how Odora worked. When she desired something, she fought for it or burned everything down in the process. Then I received the call. Not from her, however, but from the landlord. Ryan and Odora had apparently informed him that I was going through a difficult time and that payments would resume once I settled down. He had waited 2 weeks. Their rent was beyond late, and he was tired of making excuses. He asked if I intended to resume the payments. I was very straightforward in saying no. I told him to treat them like any other tenants. He sighed and admitted that he had figured as much. He said that he would give them notice by the end of the week. I didn't feel well after the call. In reality, I felt nothing at all. That night, I sat on the back porch for quite some time. I recalled every time I jumped in and helped them out without being asked. I remembered Odora guilt-tripping me into paying for her anniversary meal because she thought they deserved a night out as well, after she saw that I had taken my wife to a resort. I also remembered buying Ryan a laptop to help him launch his freelance company. He pawned it 3 months later. They didn't simply use me. They despised my ability to assist them. That's when something clicked. This was not about suffering. It was about pride. They despised the fact that I possessed something they lacked and that they relied on me. So I stopped giving. But it wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel it, all of it. So I began pulling the rug out from under them. First, I called my cell phone carrier to terminate the family plan. I hadn't checked the bill in a while. It turned out Odora had added 2 iPads, and Ryan had upgraded his phone on my account last year. Everything was still in my name. I turned off all lines except mine and my wife's. They'd find out the next time they attempted to order an Uber. The Costco card came next. Years ago, I had connected my parents to the account so they could use it to make purchases. I never thought about it, but out of curiosity, I looked into recent activity: groceries, televisions, and tires. Not for emergencies, simply free shopping. So I canceled the card entirely. Then came the automobile. This one was personal. Ryan's automobile broke down 2 years ago, and he and his family begged me for help. I bought them an old SUV, registered it in my name, and paid for the insurance. They agreed to start paying the insurance after 6 months. They never paid a penny, so I filed for a voluntary repossession. At 3 a.m., a towing firm picked up the automobile from their street. I did not say anything. I did not send any warnings. I wanted them to wake up and realize what they'd been taking for granted. By Friday, the situation had dramatically intensified. Odora called me from another number. She left a voicemail. It was 5 minutes of outrage and self-pity. She accused me of abandoning her children, claimed I was drunk with power, and then said I owed her another chance to explain. Then followed the text to my wife. Paragraphs of emotional blackmail. She said I was breaking up the family, and that she had never asked for any of this. Never asked. I opened my phone and scrolled. Can you cover daycare? We need groceries. We are short on rent. The automobile had broken down again. Can you cover Ryan's therapy? We are out of formula. Can you help with the electricity simply till the end of the month? It went on and on. I screenshot 5 of these texts and sent them to my wife. She stopped Odora. I didn't expect what happened next. On Friday night, my mom texted me. They're here only for a few days. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized what she meant when I read Odora's Facebook picture of the guest room at my parents' house with the remark, "Back where we are actually cherished. Family first." That's when it struck me. They did not go silent because they were giving up. They were swapping hosts. Instead of holding them accountable, my parents accepted it. They moved in like royalty. My father began forwarding me food receipts, saying, "Since we're feeding extra mouths now." My mother contacted me to say they needed aid with utilities until they were back on their feet. I laughed. I then told her, "No." She inquired, "You aren't going to aid us either?" I responded, "I helped for 3 years. I'm done now." And I intended it. But I knew it would not end there. If I cut Odora off and they moved in with my parents, it wouldn't be enough. I would have to cut them all off. I had a strategy for it. They assumed I'd give in. They anticipated that I would ultimately crack and send another transfer, pay another debt, and feel terrible enough to give in. They underestimated how quickly someone could go from fatigued to finished. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply finished. I waited several days. I let them settle into the comforts of my parents' home. I allowed them to start spending again. Then my mother texted me that she needed help with the grocery. My father requested if I could get him the money for his gas payment until payday, despite the fact that he retired 4 years ago and hasn't had a paycheck since. I did not respond. What they didn't realize was that I had previously spoken with my bank. Years ago, I created a second account linked to theirs for emergency transfers. I canceled it. I disabled access to every shared app, account, and service I had ever provided them. Then I accessed the utility company's website. It turned out that the water and electricity at my parents' house were still in my name. A holdover from years ago when they were strapped for cash and I offered to take care of them until things calmed down. I never considered it again. I thought about it now, so I contacted and disconnected the service effective immediately. They lost power the same night. I waited for a message, and it did not take long. My mother texted me asking whether there was an issue with the account. I did not respond. Then she tried to call. I forwarded it to voicemail. She texted again. "Your dad is upset. Fix it." Still, I did not answer. The next morning, Odora sent me a lengthy message. She claimed I was being childish. She accused me of weaponizing money to punish others. She labeled me a coward and warned that our children would grow up without cousins because of me. She claimed our family would never recover from what I had done. She concluded with, "You'll regret this." But I've never regretted it. For the first time in years, I felt able to breathe. That weekend, I informed my wife that we were taking the children on a road vacation. No phones, emails, or messages, just the 4 of us. We stayed in a cabin near the lake. We cooked over a fire. My children rushed about happily. My wife gazed at me as if I were finally present, truly here. When we arrived home, I found 6 voicemails waiting for me. 1 came from Ryan, 3 were from my mother, 1 came from Odora. I assumed the last one was from my father, using a friend's phone. I deleted all of them without listening. I had now realized what I should have known a long time ago. Helping others is love. If they expect it, it is only love that they appreciate. They never did. They attempted to play the long game, passive guilt, subtle messages, and familiar faces reaching out. They assumed that if they eased the pressure, I would give in on my own. I did not. On Monday, I stepped into my workplace and noticed something strange. A folded piece of paper resting dead center on my desk. No envelope, no name. I unwrapped it. 3 pages. My mom's handwriting. I hadn't seen her handwriting in years, not since she used to write notes on the fridge when we were kids. This note was different. She called it a plea. She stated she was begging me one last time to return to the table. She made no mention of the years of silence that followed Odora's criticism of me for something trifling. She didn't mention how they all sat silently while I was humiliated at that supper. She made no mention of the money, car, phone bills, or rent. She just stated, "It's not too late." I read it once. I then shredded all 3 documents and requested that the office manager checked the building's visitation log. It turned out that my father had arrived earlier that morning. He used to know the man at the front desk. That was the last day he worked there. They did not stop there. On Tuesday afternoon, I got a Facebook message from someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. She stated that Odora had contacted her because she was worried about me. She explained that I was going through a mental breakdown and that my wife was manipulating me. Odora did not know how to stop talking. Even if she wasn't getting anything, she wanted to shape the narrative. I responded, "Tell her I'm okay. If she messages you again, block her." On Wednesday, my wife's sister called. She stated that my mother had called her directly and expressed concern for my children. She stated that I was separating the children from their extended relatives, which was unhealthy. She claimed that good people do not isolate their children. That was it. I sat down that night and penned a single note. I copied and pasted it into every phone and account that was still associated with them in any manner. A single line. "This is your final notification. You're not welcome in my life. Any attempt to contact me, my wife, or my children will be deemed harassment and pursued legally. Do not try this." I blocked them all. Emails, phone calls, social media posts, everything. For 3 days, nothing. It was blissful. Then Friday arrived. I pulled into my driveway and saw them all. My parents' automobile was parked partially on the lawn. Odora's children ran around as if it were their own front yard. Ryan stood next to the porch, hands in his pockets, as if he owned the space. Odora and my mother were already at the door, knocking as if they lived there. I parked the car and sat inside for 10 seconds before getting out. I did not yell. I didn't inquire what they were doing. I simply walked up and stood between them and my front door. Odora began first, as she always does. She claimed I was being unkind. She claimed they were only present because I forced their hand. They did not come for money. They came for family. Ryan nodded behind her like a worn-out puppet. My father stood near the car, his arms folded. He said nothing. He never did when it mattered. My mother intervened in a gentle voice, stating they were anxious, and she missed her grandchildren. She said it had lasted long enough. I let them finish. Then I said it clearly. "Don't come to my house. You do not message my wife. You don't speak to my children. If I see any of you again, I will contact the police. I have given you every opportunity to stop this conduct. You decided not to. It isn't my responsibility anymore." Odora attempted to interrupt and alter the subject, but I would not let her. I opened the front door, stepped inside, and shut it without saying another word. Then I locked it. I called my lawyer. That same weekend, I mounted cameras all over the property. We ordered pizza that night. My children were bewildered, but quiet. My wife turned on a movie. I sat on the couch looking at them, the only people who cared about my well-being and knew I had made the correct decision. But I should have known they would not leave quietly. They weren't done. Not yet. I should have expected it. People like them don't realize when they have lost. They stay at the table even after they've lost all of their chips. They flip the table, play the victim, and attempt to loot the casino on their way out. It all started with a letter from Child Protective Services, a real one. At first, I assumed it was an error. Then I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Someone had expressed concern regarding the emotional well-being of my children. There were claims of separation from relatives and coercive domestic behavior. They did not even bother to hide it. It had Odora written all over it. The caseworker stopped by. She was pleasant and professional. She asked the correct questions. She spoke with the kids, looked around the house, and even inquired about school. She walked away with a smile, stating there was plainly nothing wrong. I questioned her directly. "Do you know who filed it?" She was uneasy, but said, "Yes, and I'll just say it's not uncommon for family disputes to result in false reports." This time, the wrath I experienced was different. It was not hot, it was frigid, focused. My sister had militarized the system. She attempted to use my children, my own children, to intimidate me back into line. I contacted my lawyer the next day. He issued a cease and desist order to Odora, Ryan, and my parents. Harassment, slander, malicious interference. He sent everything he could fit in a package. I did not stop there. I phoned the landlord at my parents' house. As it turned out, they were not the owners. They were renters. I gave the landlord a complete background on Odora and Ryan. I provided him with the name of their former landlord who had contacted me after they stopped paying. I didn't need to say much. The landlord thanked me and stated he would reconsider the terms of their lease. I also enlisted the help of the church, which they often turn to when they need sympathy. I wrote a calm, polite email to the pastor. I explained the entire thing. I submitted payment documentation, communication screenshots, and a copy of the CPS letter. 2 days later, Odora's Facebook post about being betrayed by her own blood abruptly disappeared. So did her profile. I wasn't finished. My wife and I changed the locks. We received fresh phone numbers. We talked with a children's counselor to ensure that none of this crap influenced them. We made it plain to the school that only we could pick them up. Period. Then one night, I sat down at my workstation, opened my email, and composed one more message. It was not for them. It was for myself. A list titled, Things I No Longer Feel Responsible For. My sister's rent, my parents' bills, Ryan's unemployment, their expectations, their gossip, their disappointment, their concept of family. I saved it. I printed it. I folded it and stored it in my wallet. I have not heard from any of them since. I still see their names mentioned occasionally, either by common friends or in family circles. I do not respond. I don't leave any comments. My wife and I took our children out of state last weekend. We stayed at a cottage in the Highlands. No reception, firewood, stars, and silence. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel obligated to anyone. I wasn't running away from anyone. I had already closed the door. This time, it was locked. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode on Sleepless Stories. Story 3, The Unwanted Child. To put things in perspective, my mother gave birth to me at the tender age of 20. My biological father was never involved. He never wanted children, she told me. They had only been dating for a few months when she became pregnant, and she offered him the option to leave, which he promptly did. She stated that due to the bitterness of their breakup, she chose not to demand child support from him, and he, in turn, refused to pay. Never talking again was convenient for both of them. She was fortunate to have my grandparents' unwavering support and encouragement, which enabled her to finish her schooling and secure employment. She dated a couple of men while I was younger, and then, when I was about 8 years old, she began dating Harry, a coworker. They dated for over 3 years before getting married. Although we weren't very close, Harry and I got along well enough to put up with each other being in the house. Everyone was overjoyed, including me, when my mom became pregnant 4 years after they were married. In retrospect, I probably should have known what was going to happen, but I was too preoccupied with the idea that my mother would always support me. I hoped Mom wouldn't leave me now, especially since she had endured so many challenges raising me by herself. She obviously distanced herself from me after she married Harry, and we began to drift apart, but I thought it was only a phase and that things would improve. During her pregnancy, I did my best to be encouraging, but she appeared to get angrier every time I was there. To avoid disturbing her, I made the decision to become scarce, but it seems that I wasn't inconspicuous enough. 6 months after she gave birth to twins, she and Harry sat me down for a serious conversation. They informed me that they couldn't keep me in the house since they now had 2 children to look after. They couldn't legally throw me out without getting in trouble, as I was still a juvenile, having just turned 16. By highlighting the financial burden of providing for a big family on their meager income, they attempted to persuade me otherwise. Since we had been living comfortably up until that point, I honestly didn't think it was hard to maintain 2 adults, 1 teenager, and 2 kids on the salary of 2 web engineers. They clearly only wanted me gone. I genuinely didn't want to leave. So, even at that point, I attempted to offer ways to stop it. If money was a problem, I offered to acquire a job. But my mother said she wanted to save money and resources for the children who deserved it more. She stated that they deserved to stay with them more than I did. Not that they needed this more. That was all it took for me to decide that I had to leave because it was obvious that no one wanted me. They knew I had enough dignity to know I was unwanted. So they had only nudged me in the right way after I left, without even telling me where I should go. Their strategy was successful. Since they hadn't really evicted me, it wasn't technically an eviction, but I would still consider it to be the same. I felt like I had no other choice after they had forced me into a difficult situation. I went straight to my grandparents' house when I left that day. They wanted to be there for the twins. So, even though they were upset about what my mother had done, they didn't cut her off. At 16, I obtained part-time work because I could no longer financially rely on my grandparents due to their advanced age. When my mom and Harry went to visit my grandparents with the kids, I would see them every now and then, but they seldom ever inquired about me. They tended to be very formal, as if they didn't miss me at all. Even when they did see me, they actually appeared to be happy without my presence. I was saddened by my mother's apparent decrease in irritability, but I knew there was nothing I could do about it. Until it was time to go to college, I lived with my grandparents. My mom wasn't involved with me even then, so I had to rely on friends to assist me in getting settled in my dorm because my grandparents weren't old enough or healthy enough. My mom and Harry declined, preferring to preserve money for the twins' future, so I had to take out a student loan, and one of my relatives co-signed for it. Fortunately, one of my uncles agreed to assist if I assured him that he would never be responsible for any of the costs. I worked while I was in college to make sure I wouldn't fall behind on my payments and to give myself a financial advantage. My mother and I hardly spoke once I started college, and only my grandparents were present when I graduated. Not even my mother bothered to congratulate me. In order to avoid being a burden to my elderly grandparents, I began working and lived independently after college. Although I didn't make much money during the first few years, I was still able to pay for groceries, utilities, rent, and even started to pay off my debt while setting money aside for the future. In fact, I would describe that as living on a limited income. Fortunately, things finally got better. It took a while, but I eventually rose through the ranks of my organization. Considering that I received very little assistance, I'm proud of how far I've come and am now in a rather comfortable posture. Unexpectedly, my mother discovered that I earn a good living, even though we haven't spoken for many years. At nearly 33, I currently hold a senior management role at the same organization where I began my career. About 4 months ago, I got a big promotion, but I wanted to keep it a secret, so only a select few individuals knew about it. To thank my uncle for co-signing my loan back when I was having trouble paying for college, I did inform him. According to what I understand, he just met my mom and Harry at a family get-together and urged her to get in touch with me to congratulate me on my success. Even though I'm sure he meant well, it didn't work out because she didn't even get in touch with me to offer me congratulations. In the end, my mother learned about it and recently visited my home with Harry, insisting on talking to me. I should note that I haven't spoken to her since I started college. I blocked her everywhere and left her out of my life after graduating since I didn't think there was any use in hoping she would change her mind. She didn't appear to be negatively impacted, and to be honest, I doubt she even noticed. Only my grandparents, who were aware that I disliked discussing my mother, were in contact with me, and they steered clear of the subject. I didn't really stay in touch with my uncle either. So I was unaware that my mom and Harry had been having financial difficulties for a few years. Only when they arrived at my door and told me how bad things had gotten did I find out. It was wishful thinking, but the only reason I even allowed them inside was because I hoped they would be coming to make amends. They began by stating that they had heard from my uncle about my promotion and how I was one of the youngest individuals in such a prominent position in my firm, rather than congratulating me on my accomplishment. It seems that they were surprised that I had kept it from them. Ironically, I was taken aback that they expected me to communicate with them at all, much less deliver any positive news. Additionally, they were disappointed that I had shut them out of my life, claiming that it was only because they had prioritized their children above me. They maintained that I should have been old enough to comprehend their rearranged priorities and not harbor resentment as a teenager. They said that I should have supported their decisions rather than going in with my grandparents. I'm not even sure why they thought I would agree with their choice to expel me from the house. They tried to gaslight me into thinking that I was the bad guy for being angry, that they had ejected me so they could spend time with their children alone. But that's how they began our reunion after all these years. They talked about how tough the past several years had been for them, without even giving me a chance to explain my side of the story. They described how they had launched their own company, but regrettably, it did not succeed, resulting in losses. They were now attempting to make up for previous losses, and they desperately needed money as the twins were getting close to college age. I saw then why they had come. They needed financial assistance. They didn't waste any time going right to the point, even trying to soften it by claiming that I could make it up to them by paying for my siblings' schooling. But at first, they were upset that I hadn't contacted them despite performing well. Their attempt to make it seem as though they were doing me a favor by allowing me to pay for the college education of two children I no longer knew astounded me. I told them right away that I wouldn't be doing that, and that it was disrespectful of them to believe they could coerce me into doing so. I became irate and reminded them that they were the reason I had to work during my college years and pay for my own education, because they wanted to save for their real children who they believed deserved it more than I did. They had refused to provide me with financial support back then. I assured them that they had no right to expect anything from me now, particularly financial support, since I had never questioned their choice to put the twins first and had just left them alone. They actually no longer had the right to demand that I communicate with them. Instead of attempting to emotionally control me, I pointed out that they could now use the same money to pay for the twins' college bills, because they had wished to conserve money and resources for the children who deserved it. I had nothing else to say, so I asked them to go. I was stupid to invite them inside my house in the first place, assuming they might have come to express regret for their treatment of me. They became irritated and attempted to place the blame elsewhere when I began to insist that they leave. They informed me that I wasn't innocent in this case, their protection. They said I was over-enthusiastic, over-involved, and frequently irritable while we all lived together. I was only a teenager trying to keep in touch with my family as they drifted away from me. So I couldn't believe that was a true issue they had with me. They then had the audacity to claim that I was no better than them, since I had denied their request. They said I was forgetting all the years my mother had taken care of me and brought me up alone. They said that this was my opportunity to make it up to her and assist her, but I was being rude and unappreciative instead. Since I was a child at the time, I thought it was absurd that they would bring that up. Even if I had wanted to, I couldn't have decided not to rely on them. Furthermore, it wasn't like they were helping me. They pushed me out of the house and effectively forced me out as soon as they believed I was mature enough to manage things on my own. For the following 18 years, they refused to acknowledge my existence. I was still shocked that they had the gall to expect me to aid them now, as if I owed them something, even after everything that had happened. During the dispute, things became quite personal and ugly, and I finally threatened to call the police if they didn't leave my property. My mother reminded me of all the sacrifices she had made when I was younger, ostensibly because she wanted to be a good mother before they finally departed after more arguments. She said that I had been ungrateful the one time she had expected me to sympathize with her predicament and allow her to put other people before myself. She now claimed that rather than the other way around, I was portraying her as the villain. Since then, this has been bothering me, and I'm having trouble figuring out whether I'm to blame, whether I've been expecting too much from my mother, or whether she's simply deceiving me. I decided to post on Reddit to get some unbiased perspectives, even though I'm quite sure I'm correct. AITA for not paying for my half-siblings' college tuition just because my stepdad and estranged mother are having financial difficulties? Edit. Even though my uncle had excellent intentions, I reminded him that what he did was wrong and unacceptable. His actions undoubtedly had a negative effect. I wouldn't be in this predicament if he hadn't shared my life with my mother and disclosed my contact details without my consent. He apologized excessively, stating that he was unaware of their financial difficulties, and that he had no idea my mother would respond in this manner. He admitted that he had no business telling my mother about my life, and that if we had wanted to get back together, we would have done so without his help. Since his heart was in the right place, I don't intend to cut him out of my life. I would have been much more angry if he had meant something different. He simply made an error. In addition, it was because of him that I was initially able to attend college. He was the only person who was prepared to assume the responsibility of co-signing my loan application. If you consider it, I might not be in this situation at all if it weren't for him. I made sure to let him know that what he did wasn't appropriate, since I don't want to come across as unappreciative, but I'm also not a doormat. Whatever I did was fair enough, and I believe I found the ideal balance. We're doing great together, and I won't hold anything against him because I needed this resolution somehow. I also discussed my mom's recent struggles with my grandparents. They believe I'm correct and have promised to make an effort to persuade her to change her mind. I realized that they didn't want to lose touch with their other grandchildren, which is why they have remained in touch with my mom. They understand the struggles my mom's family is going through, but they don't think it's right or fair to put me through this. That's their position on the issue, and I believe it's reasonable enough. First update. My mother has taken it upon herself to remind me of all she did for me growing up, ever since we last spoke, which was nearly 9 days ago. She probably sends me an email every other day to make me feel like I owe her something. It's not like she gave me a favor by raising me alone, and she was legally required to take care of me, so I don't really understand the point. She only reared me when it was convenient for her. She and her spouse decided to expel me as soon as I started to cause them trouble, citing the need to save money for the twins and their future. Now that we're in the future and the twins are adults, I believe they should rely on themselves rather than wasting time trying to manipulate and guilt-trip me. Although I had been ignoring her emails, I made the decision to reply a few days ago. I explained to her all I had written in my essay. She didn't take it well as expected, and labeled me ungrateful once more. I just informed her that calling me names would not alter the truth, and that I no longer wanted to have any contact with her because she had been a bad mother. I blocked her email account after that, but she made a new one to continue to annoy me. Since she never done the same for me, I blocked that one as well. And I'll keep doing so until she understands that I'm not here to mope about her. To be honest, I'm glad we're finally having this discussion because I think it will end quickly, and I'll have the necessary closure. Only because I was still clinging to the hope that perhaps they had changed, that perhaps they were here to congratulate me and make amends. Did I welcome them into my house and talk to them that day? However, speaking with them made me realize that they are just not the type of individuals who are able to experience regret, guilt, or shame. I've fully given up on ever making amends with them after it once again made me realize how self-centered and cunning they are. Second update. I believe that my mother's appearance at my place of employment earlier today was the most bizarre thing she has ever done. Fortunately, I wasn't working today, so she departed really fast and didn't succeed in her endeavor. I was feeling a little under the weather, so I decided to take the day off, and I'm so happy I did. She would have definitely thrown a fit or done anything to make me look foolish if I'd been present. When the receptionist called to inform me that my mom had arrived, wanting to see me and refusing to go despite being informed that I wasn't there, I learned the truth. When they put her on the phone with me, I firmly told her that I was at home, even though I was already rather anxious about what she might do. She was informed that if she attempted anything at my place of employment, I would sue her until she would be too ashamed to send her children to college. I did my best to sound threatening, so I believe it truly frightened her. She agreed to depart right away, provided I met her in person, so it must have worked. I reminded her that she couldn't afford a lawsuit at the moment, and informed her that she wasn't in a position to be making demands. I also mentioned that my employer would not think twice about suing her if the situation worsened, which would be a very different scenario because they wouldn't be as forgiving as I had been. She'd be better off just going out in silence. I didn't get any more calls or notifications regarding the event. So I guess she left after giving the phone back to the receptionist. I can't afford for this to happen again because that was undoubtedly a near call. I've made the decision to speak with a lawyer to find out what precautions I may take. She hasn't threatened me directly, so I'm not sure if this is enough to get a restraining order, but I still want to speak with the attorney to discuss my alternatives. I just have to hope that this experience was unpleasant enough for her to think about leaving me alone till then. Third update. Since I'm very certain we now have grounds for a restraining order, I suppose I don't need to consider filing one. When my mother arrived at my place of employment last week, I was able to persuade her to leave. However, in light of this week's events, I believe that a restraining order against her needs to be issued for everyone. She was waiting outside my door when I got home from work a few days ago. I informed her right away that I didn't want to argue and that I would call the police if she didn't leave. She practically raced at me and threw me to the ground, sending my phone flying out of my hands as I was ready to dial. She cursed at me and blamed me for everything that had gone wrong in her life while she attempted to beat me up. It took me a while to react since I was so taken aback by her insane conduct. However, because I consistently work out and I'm much younger than her, it was simple for me to overwhelm her when I did. Fortunately, all the shouting had alerted my neighbors to the problem and caused them to call the police. They even came to my aid and restrained my mother as we awaited the arrival of the cops. I made the decision to file charges when the police eventually arrived. She is currently in a lot of trouble. In addition, I've discussed this with my attorney and requested a restraining order against her. I've been informed that Harry has taken the children and moved in with his parents. I'm not sure if he intends to come back anytime soon. He apparently challenged her about her behavior after saving her and informed her that she couldn't continue acting in this manner. She also got into a fight with him, which seems to mean she's really lost it. I believe she finds it difficult to believe that I'm doing well in life, but in all honesty, she is to blame for her own issues. I will not be sorry for her. I'll have the restraining order in place soon. And since I'm making more money, I've already started thinking about moving into a larger home. Since now seems like the ideal moment, I'm going to start exploring my alternatives. Being linked to someone like that is embarrassing. So I sincerely hope my mother receives the support she needs and learns to behave normally. She has also been nasty to my grandparents who have told me they no longer want to be around her. The only person she can blame for everyone avoiding her is herself. Anyway, I'm not worried about it anymore. Story 4. The Party's Dark Secret. I've been seeing Katie, my girlfriend, for 4 years now. We met in college, and she's truly the first person she's ever dated, largely because her parents were incredibly strict when she was in high school. Due to their religious beliefs, her parents firmly oppose having sex before marriage, and because Katie is really close with them, we've been waiting. I had fully intended to pop the question within the next 6 months now that she had graduated. I had even chosen a ring and everything. This girl had me completely smitten. But last night, or more precisely, last weekend, that all changed. Since high school, Katie has had a male best friend, whom her parents disapproved of due to his sexual orientation. Let's call him Liam. Being in the same college as him meant they could spend as much time together as they wanted, which made her very happy. Although I've never been a huge fan of the male best friend dynamic, I was willing to overlook it because he was allegedly gay. However, he came out as bisexual 2 years ago. I requested Katie to stop spending time with him alone because I never felt comfortable in his presence. She said that, like her parents, I tried to control her and didn't support him. I informed her that I would not be staying for it, but that it was up to her if she wanted to continue seeing him alone. Although it was the largest issue we had ever faced together, we managed to resolve it. As a compromise, we agreed that Liam and his partner could spend time with me and Katie together, but never by themselves. I only wanted to establish a fair limit. I never intended to cut her off from her pals. But until Liam transferred to another institution during the summer, the 4 of us only met up twice. Katie continued to communicate with him via Discord, maintained friendships with him and his ex-boyfriend, and even joined them and a few other pals to create a gaming server. Despite the fact that the majority of these buddies were guys, she reassured me that nothing amusing was happening, and that the majority of them even had girlfriends. Liam invited her to his birthday celebration last weekend. To make sure I was comfortable with her leaving, Katie wanted to discuss it with me first. Even though it was only a 2-hour drive away, she claimed she hadn't seen him in 2 years. There would be a number of her Discord server pals, including women she had never met in person before, as well as Liam's girlfriend. Unfortunately, I couldn't accompany her because I had a weekend excursion scheduled that would take me away from Friday to Sunday. However, I assured Katie that I trusted her and that I didn't mind if she went to see her friends. The issue began on Saturday evening. She sent me a text message in the morning while she was heading to the party, another text when she arrived, and a few more messages to check in during the day. Around 9 or 10 p.m., Katie informed me she intended to drive back. However, the messages ceased at that moment. I didn't bother her because I thought she was just enjoying herself and didn't want to come across as domineering. She eventually arrived at approximately 2 o'clock in the morning, and I stayed up to keep an eye on her whereabouts to make sure she got home safely. Although it was out of the ordinary, I trusted her and didn't want to assume anything. I assumed she would explain that she simply got caught up in having fun with her pals when I called her in the morning. She didn't pick up the phone when I called her on Sunday morning. A few minutes later, she wrote back to say she wasn't feeling well, had been sleeping, and had a hangover. Given that Katie doesn't drink, this was odd. I wished her well, advised her to drink a lot of water, and boarded my trip home. She was cuddled up in my bed in the dark when I got to my flat. She has my apartment's key, but she rarely uses it because I'm typically there to open the door with her. She remained silent when I questioned her about why she hadn't stayed at her flat to relax. She has hardly left my room since, and has been complaining about not feeling well for the entire week. I've been visiting home during my lunch breaks to check on her since she took time off from work. In the back of my mind, I was dubious of what had transpired at the party over the weekend, but I was also frightened for her. Katie sobbed as she woke me up from the couch late last night. Other than using the restroom, it was the first time she had left my room since I returned home. I asked her what was wrong after comforting her until she was able to speak clearly. She told me that she had committed a terrible act. Liam offered to bring her home after she admitted to being incredibly intoxicated by accident on Saturday night. After dropping Liam off, 3 of her buddies from the Discord gaming server hopped in a second car to follow them and drive her home. They assisted Katie in climbing the stairs and entering her flat once they arrived. Then she had intercourse with them all. She claimed each of the 4 men. According to Katie, she was completely out of it and doesn't recall the majority of it. Because she loves me so much and didn't want to upset me, she said she's been unwell ever since and has been trying to figure out how to tell me. She threw away her virginity, which she was ostensibly saving for marriage, to 4 other guys rather than the man who had taken care of her for the previous 4 years, even though she didn't mean to upset me. I found her at my apartment because she said she intended to inform me as soon as I returned, but she couldn't bring herself to do so since she didn't want to lose me. She pleaded with me not to end our relationship. I informed her that I needed some alone time to reflect. After that, she pleaded with me not to force her to return to her apartment. I told her she may return to my room, as I didn't want to quarrel. Throughout the night, I could hear her sobbing sporadically. Admittedly, I was moved to tears myself. It's unbelievable that she would ruin our 4 years of relationship over a single party. I was about to pop the question. My faith in her has been betrayed. I haven't been able to concentrate all day at work. If she's still there, a part of me wants to tell her to leave as soon as I get home, and that I don't want to see her ever again. A part of me wants to speak with her more and try to repair what we have left. I am unable to determine which perspective is more rational. How can I get around this? Update. This is triggering alerts everywhere. I apologize to everyone who missed my last post. I'm finally getting around to writing this because my girlfriend went to bed early and I have nothing else to do. If you don't care, you can go straight to the update. I believe my previous post was removed due to accusations of being fraudulent. I wasn't spending time in the comments refuting every charge, which is one of the main reasons why many appear to believe it was a fake. Since I left work to see how Katie was doing, I hadn't even opened Reddit at the time, It wasn't even close to my top priority. One moment he says he has her location, and the next he's surprised she's at his apartment, is a simple and quick way to refute this. Just to make sure she made it home safely, I looked up her whereabouts on Saturday night. Since I am not a stalker who follows her everywhere, I did not look up her location after that. I wouldn't have known her precise location unless I had checked our texts between my trip and my arrival home, because the iPhone displays your location in the text messages you exchange with that person. Furthermore, not everyone owns an iPhone. My girlfriend and I use an app since I do, but she doesn't. I don't need to be a stalker. Therefore, no, I don't receive notifications from the app. Random excessive details, I apologize. I wanted to let everything out since, as I previously stated, I had been holding my breath since she informed me what had transpired that evening. I had all of those information about the situation circling around in my mind. The core content is flawless, but the update is riddled with typos. Only the TLDDR update was written by the OP. After learning that my partner may have been raped, I apologize for being a little disorganized and rushed. By the way, I've gone back and corrected the mistakes. After I shut down Reddit, I had no clue that my article would receive hundreds of more comments, each of them critically examining every word I said in the letter. There isn't any worry at all that she's become pregnant. No concerns regarding STI. Not then. No, I wasn't even certain that I would remain with her. If I had stayed, I would have been worried about becoming pregnant and getting STI, but at the time of writing, I thought she had cheated on me and was considering ending our relationship. No worries that she was potentially drugged and raped, not at the time of writing once more. She had told me that she had intercourse with 4 men, and I was still in shock. I would have thought she would have mentioned getting raped or drugged, but she didn't. I hadn't even considered the possibility that she might be in denial herself until I read all the responses. Does this devout girl who desired to postpone marriage now want to be train run on her? Fake, of course. No, it turns out that she didn't want anything to do with what transpired. Look at the remainder of the subreddit if you're among those who said, someone in my position wouldn't have taken the time to write everything out for a post. There wouldn't be any posts here at all if people in difficult situations didn't share their experiences. You may personally expletive off everyone who implied that it was a hoax, or that she must have been a cow for 4 men to carry her up the stairs. Even though I wish what I wrote wasn't true, everything above was a bunch of pretentious. For the record, I just included all of that in order to prevent harassment on this thread. If none of that applies to you, you can go straight to this section. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who assisted with this, as reading over all of the comments, let me realize what actually occurred. Just before lunch, I left work and went straight home to see how my girlfriend was doing. She was lying in bed, sobbing just as I had left her. After getting her permission, my initial action was to simply go hold her. I shared her tears. I eventually broached the subject of what had transpired that evening. Was any of that really what she wanted to happen? Despite the fact that a lot was said, she did not, as many of you urged. To be clear, the friends she was with at the party were also intimate friends of Liam, her best buddy of 8 years, and not just strangers she met online. They were folks she had spoken to and played games with over the past year, but she had never met them in person. Over her headset, I would frequently hear her conversing with them, and I never noticed anything odd. I was glad she had people to play with as she gained because she's somewhat shy and introverted. She also claimed that there were 4 or 5 ladies working in the server, so they weren't all men. 3 of the guys and 2 of the ladies were present at the gathering. Liam's girlfriend, a few of other pals, and several of their partners were also there. There were only around 15 people in total, and most of them knew one another. A little get-together of Liam's closest pals at his residence was all that was intended to happen. It wasn't even intended for alcohol to play a significant role. Since they hadn't been able to come together in person for a while, the most of them were just enjoying themselves at the start of the party. Since many of the attendees were LGBTQ+, there was little distinction between the sexes to engage in general mingling and socializing. Some people divided into small groups to talk. One of the visitors gave everyone mystery shots about the halfway point of the celebration. Liam persuaded Katie to take it for his birthday, even though she first objected. Everyone urged her to try the shot after learning that she had never had one before. Liam emphasized that it was just one shot and that it would wear off before she had to drive home. If not, he offered, she may wait as long as it took for her to feel safe behind the wheel. She finally took the shot because she felt pressed. Things became a little less obvious after that. More people were drinking and hanging out. She is unsure of the specific individuals who continued to give her alcohol, claiming she didn't want to spoil Liam's celebration. If nothing else, she was confident Liam would protect her. Katie claimed that even though she didn't feel well, she trusted him to let her know if something wasn't right, and that he kept telling her that everything was okay. She recalls being quite ill, witnessing other people faint on the couch, and hearing Liam express his desire to drive her home himself in order to check on her. He expressed regret for allowing her to become so damaged and apologized. She recalls 2 other Discord males getting into his car after one of her friends promised Liam he would follow them in his car and bring Liam back later. She remembers Liam helping her get sober in the car by offering her a bottle of water. She recalls them laughing as they carried her upstairs to her apartment and brought her inside. I won't go into any more detail than that. She didn't want anything that occurred to happen. Was she gullible? Perhaps. Did she likely overlook some warning signs and make some poor decisions? Yes. However, Katie wasn't worthy of that. The men who committed this are to blame. I'm not giving her a deadline, and she doesn't want to disclose anything to the police. I completely support her decision, and I've read a lot about how horrible that process can be. Of course, I'll support her through that as well if she ever decides she does want to submit a report. We're going to visit a physician. Katie claims that she has been in a lot of discomfort, which is one of the reasons she spent the majority of this time curled up in bed. After some persuasion and assurance, she consented even though she really doesn't want to be prodded down there. In addition to seeing her on Monday, we'll also get tested for STI and pregnancy, 2 things we're equally concerned about. We've spoken a lot over the weekend. Both of us have shed many tears. Hugs and consoling one another when necessary have been shared in abundance. At least she gets some sunlight in the bedroom now that I've opened the curtains. I'm not forcing her to return to her apartment for those who were worried. And to those who suggested it, no, I won't be ratting her out to her parents. Nor would I abandon her now or after she recovers in order to find someone who isn't damaged. In order to care for her, attend as many doctor's visits as necessary, schedule therapy and other activities, I will be taking the entire next week off. Although I doubt I will ever be able to make up for the time I spent apart from her this past week, I promise to support her through whatever comes next. Once more, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who left a comment on my initial post and made me understand what a self-centered idiot I was. I hope that everyone who was worried would find this update helpful, though I hope we can get there. Katie isn't feeling well at the moment. Comments from OP. You do what you think is best, but I want to add something to make sure she considers it, because these pieces of work do this to all women, not just herself. As much as I would like to say Katie won't be the last, she wasn't the first. She is prepared to allow this to occur repeatedly if she is unwilling to act morally and report the violence. You should also speak with Liam and find out why he abandoned her to be raped. This is what he did. He let it occur. He has to deal with this, and he can either support her or oppose her. She must inform her parents. You are sticking with a cheater. Therefore, please stop updating if she is unwilling to do this. OP's reply: I will not issue an ultimatum to her. She doesn't report, so I won't label her a cheater. Following the re-traumatization that comes with reporting and everything that follows, rape victims have taken their own lives. I gave it a thorough investigation. Have you, or are you assuming without having first-hand experience what occurs in our legal system? Warning, all 4 of them would probably walk even if she did report. Nor am I forcing her to tell her overly devout parents so they can try and embarrass her. Man, she is not responsible for this. The men who committed this are the ones who must be prepared to act morally and put an end to fat rape. Story 5. The Wedding Day Betrayal. Life has a tendency of catching you off guard, doesn't it? I, a 35-year-old woman, never imagined that I would be here, sharing my heart. The idea that my fiancé, the man I believed I would spend the rest of my life with, married my estranged twin sister after just a week of getting to know her, still baffles me. What brought me here? Everything is a lengthy and agonizing tale, but I must let everything out. I suppose I ought to begin at the beginning. To put it mildly, my twin sister and I have had a complex family dynamic for as long as I can remember. My sister was obviously the star child from a young age. You would assume that parents would treat twins equally, wouldn't they? False. In our family, my sister always came first and I came second. When we were young, it began with modest things. My sister always had the first choice when our parents bought us clothes or toys. She would always make the first choice, leaving me with anything she didn't like, even if the products were identical but different in color. I would be lectured about selfishness, how the gifts were the same anyway, and how acting entitled would make me never get far in life if I ever objected. The preference increased in intensity as we aged. I'll admit that I resented my sister for enjoying the attention and pampering. We were never close, and as we started middle school, our distance from one another only grew. She began hanging out with the cool kids and distanced herself from our group of friends. I could at least have my buddies to myself and find some quiet at school. So, in a way, this was better for me. The distance between my sister and I continued to widen throughout middle and high school. By the time we graduated, our social networks and areas of interest had entirely changed because I would be interacting with her less. This worked for me. Although she continued to be cruel, particularly at school when she tried to appear cool to her peers, I had grown accustomed to her conduct by that point and was not particularly bothered by it. Things between us became so bad at the conclusion of high school that there was no turning back. I knew exactly what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I put a lot of effort into my college applications. In addition, I wanted to stay up with my pals, who were all striving for top schools. Since I wasn't interested in finding out, I never inquired about my sister's essay preparation. However, for someone who wasn't ready or didn't seem to know what she wanted to do, she exuded far too much confidence in her admissions. I was devastated to learn that she was accepted to my ideal school, but I was not. Even though I was sad, I felt uneasy. I discovered just in time that she had stolen my work and turned it in as her own after doing some research. I was enraged. As usual, my parents would have told me to suck it up and that nothing could be done now, so I didn't want to inform them. I had had enough of being polite and being trampled. I made the decision to go nuclear. I sent the university an email outlining her plagiarism and proving that the material was actually mine. Additionally, I informed them of the circumstances at home and asked that they use caution when responding to her. They did, however, reply and put her on a blacklist after discovering that she had plagiarized during the application process. She sat stunned when she received the email and gave me such a hateful look that I thought I would pass out. However, she was unable to tell her parents anything, that she stole my essay. What could she have said? I was more than happy that she was finally receiving the credit she deserved. Even though I knew I had put her in a difficult situation, I'll confess that it was stressful and to me at least a little funny. She was aware of my actions and I was aware of hers. She was unable to go because it would require her to acknowledge that she had stolen my work, and I didn't want to go to my parents for a resolution. Unfortunately for her, this injustice devastated her parents. They insisted that there was no plagiarism involved and were resolved to bring it up with the university. It became messy at this point. When my parents emailed the institution, they received a thorough response regarding her application and the work, my work, from which she had stolen. I mistakenly thought that after they witnessed what their beloved daughter had done to me, they would finally accept her for who she truly was. And perhaps, just possibly, I would start to play a significant role in the family. The exact reverse was what took place. I spent days being scolded for intentionally destroying my sister's life and profession. They chose someone to harass as soon as they discovered that I was the one who had reported the plagiarism. She stole my work, but that didn't matter. The fact that she was at fault didn't matter. The fact that she prevented me from attending my ideal school didn't matter. The fact that I had exposed her without their knowledge was all that mattered. They called me all kinds of names and stated that talking to them about it would have been the right thing to do, after which they would have come up with a solution. I informed them that letting her leave without any consequences would have been their only option, and I would have been told to accept it and apply somewhere else. My home was a wreck, and nobody wanted to hear my side of the story. It was now obvious that I would always be the fall guy and that my sister would never be held accountable for anything she did. I was just waiting for college, but the following few months were terrible. I knew that as soon as I left the house, I would never return. In any case, there was nothing to return to, so I did just that. I instantly stopped communicating with my sister and my parents after leaving for college. After her little incident, she was dead to me, and I had no intention of ever seeing her again. Going to college was a welcome adjustment. I worked hard, had a good life, and made good friends. Determining to succeed on my own without assistance from my family, I immersed myself into my studies and extracurricular activities. I met M around this period, and we remained friends for a few years. We had the same group of friends even though he was my senior in college. He asked me to be his girlfriend just before he graduated, and I accepted. Since he was one of my best friends and I enjoyed spending time with him, I thought a relationship would be the natural next step. He informed me that he had been crushing on me for years and had been trying to have the guts to ask me out until I said yes. Sincerely, I thought this was cute and informed him that even if he had asked me sooner, I would have said yes. For what it's worth, our connection was good. We knew each other well because we were already close friends. A certain amount of ease and candor was present, and it just happened. I also told him about my family's whole predicament. I clarified that nothing could ever force me to speak to my sister again and that I had very little contact with either of my parents. I requested that he honor that. His family is picture perfect. Therefore, he found it ridiculous that a family could be so dysfunctional. He is the eldest of 4 siblings, all of whom are supportive and close, and his parents are deeply in love. He has never experienced my ordeal. I liked and appreciated the familial dynamic he came from, and I respected that. The affection they had for one another was really sweet. I couldn't help but feel a little envious because I had never had it. But because he couldn't imagine dysfunctional families, I made it plain to him that he should never expect me to return to my family and attempt to make things right. I trusted him since he appeared fine with it. I had no idea that this would turn out to be my worst life decision. I concentrated on developing my career after college. I was resolved to show myself, and if I'm being completely honest, my family, that I could be successful without their help or connections. I put myself into my work and worked my way up the corporate ladder. I had a prosperous marketing career, a great downtown apartment, and a circle of close friends who had become my adopted family by the time I was in my early 30s. We both decided to take things slowly, but Em and I kept dating. Neither of us felt the need to rush into marriage because we were both focused on our careers. I felt like I had at last found someone who understood and supported me, and the arrangement was comfortable. Em proposed to me 2 years ago when I was 33. Yes, of course, I said. By that point, we had been dating for about 8 years, and I was certain that he was the man I wanted to live my entire life with. His family welcomed me with wide arms when he first introduced me to them. Even though it wasn't biological, I felt like I had a family at last. I formed separate ties with each of his siblings, who were very hospitable. 2 sisters and 1 brother. Even before I married him, I felt like I was a member of the family. The next natural step was marriage, and I was quite content with my life and my relationship. Planning for the wedding, honeymoon, and other details took up the whole year prior to our planned wedding last year. It was a difficult period for our relationship as well as stressful, since I recognized then that we had differences and that it would take work to overcome them. Nevertheless, we voluntarily persevered. While deciding on the guest list, we got into one of our most heated arguments. He wanted to invite a large number of people, including his immediate relatives, some uncles, aunts, his siblings, partners, and others. But I wanted a small, private wedding. However, I didn't have any family members I wanted to invite. I informed him that I genuinely didn't want my family near me on my wedding day, and that I would only be inviting my friends. He initially agreed, but I could tell he was hesitant. When I asked him if there was an issue, he said that there wasn't, so I dropped it. Nevertheless, he approached me a week later and advised me to invite my family since there would be no wedding without a family present. I gave him a wide-eyed look and informed him that I had always made it plain that my family was not involved in my life. There was no reason to be upset about my parents' absence, because they were unaware that I was engaged and that the bride and groom were the only two guests required for a wedding. He refused to give up. He said that any arguments I had with them could be put aside for a single day, and that his intention was only to invite them to the wedding, not to establish a romantic relationship or extend forgiveness. Any invitation, I informed him, would imply that I wanted to patch things up, and I didn't want to do that. I should have left him there. Looking back, I could tell that he had chosen to hurl this at me, even though he claimed to understand my reality and my upbringing, which I had always been open about. But in love, I was a fool. I nearly stopped talking to him after our many arguments, but I knew deep down that we had to come to an agreement. He finally explained to me why he insisted on inviting my family after much back and forth. He claimed that he didn't want his relatives to believe that he was getting married to a woman who didn't get along well with her family. He believed that my parents' absence would reflect negatively on his family, which is highly traditional and has always lived by the family first motto. That was not what he wanted for me. I initially believed his way of thinking to be considerate and caring, but I soon came to see how flawed it was. Since his parents and siblings already knew that I didn't get along with mine, he was more concerned about the impression his family would get, particularly his extended family, than he was about the psychological effects on me. I should have seen that the show was more important to him than his wife. I paid the price for not doing so. I finally decided to phone my folks after much back and forth, but there was where I crossed the boundary. I informed him that while I would have them there, my sister and no other family members would be present. My family would not be permitted to speak, and there would be no father-daughter dance. He had to put himself in my shoes, and that was the only need for inviting them. Fortunately, he consented, and he was aware that he had little other option. Additionally, I cautioned him against reaching out to people on his own. I would only call and extend an invitation when I thought the time was appropriate. I knew they would make something up and convince my sister to go if I told them too soon. And I couldn't agree to that. To be honest, I also hoped that they might not be able to make it if I told them too late. In this manner, even though I would be technically correct, I would still get my way. I believe he had a suspicion, but even if he had, he remained silent. So, that was that. 6 weeks before the wedding, I told my parents, and they assured me that the whole family will undoubtedly be present to support me on this wonderful day. I interrupted them immediately and informed them that my sister would not be attending my wedding in any way. I would take them out myself if they attempted to be cunning and brought her anyhow, even if just the two of them were invited. They attempted to object, claiming that it was the ideal moment for the family to get back together, that I should stop being a baby, that I had gotten my revenge, and that I should be content. Before the wedding, I informed them that this was the only way I would be contacting them. They were aware of the location and the time, and they could attend if they so desired, but I wouldn't think twice about taking the required action if they tried anything. I hung up the phone after that. I was completely mistaken to believe that was a strong enough warning to stop them from making any plans. I should have anticipated that my sister would show up there and cause chaos. She did create a mess, but it was far more extensive than I had anticipated. I need to get this off my chest. Yet, as I sit here typing this, I can feel the hurt and rage rising within me once more. What happened next was a betrayal so profound and agonizing that it rocked the foundations of the life I had worked so hard to create. And I needed to tell someone, anyone, what happened next. I'll continue this in my upcoming update. I need some time to gather my thoughts because writing it all at once hurts too much. I appreciate you reading this far. I had no idea that I would be telling my tale in this way, but here we are. I would be grateful to hear your opinions and advice. Right now, I feel completely lost. Update 1. A week has passed since my last post, and I'm still in shock about everything that transpired. We appreciate all of your encouraging messages and remarks. I never thought that strangers on the internet would be so generous. Where did I leave off then? Yes, the dreaded family invitation and the wedding planning. In case you're not convinced, things have gotten worse. My parents came into town via plane the week before the wedding. They asked if Em and I could meet at their hotel so they could give me something. Em persuaded me to go despite my reservations, suggesting that it might be a peace offering. He assured me that he would accompany me and that we would depart as soon as difficulty appeared. I felt sick to my stomach when we got to the motel. I sensed a problem as soon as we entered their room. My twin sister was seated on the bed, grinning smugly, and there she was. Just a few days before my wedding, my parents had ambushed us in the hopes of forcing a family reunion. I went cold. The old emotions of hurt, betrayal, and rage returned with a vengeance. Em put his hand on my back when he could tell I was upset, but it didn't help much. With her arms extended as though the past 15 years of separation didn't matter, my mother took a stand. "We thought it was time to move on from the past," she remarked, her voice brimming with fake tenderness. "Your sister wants to talk to you about something." My sister got up and began what seemed like a prepared statement before I could respond. "I apologize for what happened with the college application, and I know I hurt you," she started. "I've regretted that ever since. I was foolish and young." I gave a sour laugh. Young and dim-witted? We weren't 8. We were 18. You were fully aware of what you were doing. My father added in a firm tone, "Now, let's avoid bringing up previous points of contention. As a family, we are here to move forward." I looked to Em expecting him to support me and remind them of our wedding deal, but he was silent and had a serious look on his face. I trembled as I murmured, "May we go now?" After he paused, he said something that completely shocked me. "Perhaps we ought to listen to them. After all, they are trying." I turned and left the room without saying another word. Trying to make sense of what had happened, I headed to the hotel bar and ordered a heavy drink. Hours went by. My phone was vibrating, and I chose to ignore the never-ending barrage of missed calls and messages. When I eventually returned to our flat, it was already midnight. Em was pacing the living room while she waited to wake up. Hours passed while we argued. Em insisted that I should at least attempt to make amends because family was vital. How he could be so oblivious to the suffering they had inflicted upon me was beyond me. We were clearly at a standstill as the night went on. "I need some time," I responded at last. "I'll be spending a few days with a friend. I must think." The days that followed were a haze. I ignored Em and my family's calls and texts and stayed with my best pal. I needed time to reflect and determine my true desires. The more I considered it, the more I saw how deeply Em's actions had damaged my faith in him. I eventually consented to meet with Em 3 days prior to the wedding. A calm cafe where we had gone on our first date years prior served as a neutral setting for our meeting. I didn't miss the irony. Em appeared awful. He appeared to have aged years in a matter of days, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I was still angry and hurt, but I also felt bad for putting him through this. "I'm sorry," he started, as soon as I took a seat. "I ought not to have pressured you to make amends with your relatives. I was mistaken." Hours passed while we recapped past exchanges and upsetting experiences. Ultimately, we reached a decision that felt necessary, but shattered my heart. "I think we need to postpone the wedding," Em whispered. "We clearly have some issues we need to work through." With a mixture of relief and regret, I nodded. "I think that's for the best." We came away from the cafe with a rough plan. We would separate for a month, avoid communication, and give our desires some serious thought. We would then get together once more to determine whether to proceed with the wedding or, well, we didn't want to consider the other option. I began making calls. The following day, I informed our vendors that the wedding would have to be postponed indefinitely. Although we lost some deposits, most were understanding. I communicated with our visitors by sending out a general email outlining the circumstances in ambiguous language. Then there was quiet. Like an unending desert, the month without communication stretched out in front of me. To distract myself from the uncertainties of my relationship, I immersed myself into my work and picked up new interests. I initially incessantly checked my phone, half hoping, partly expecting to find a message from M. However, I noticed that I was checking less and less as the days stretched into weeks. During our connection, I began to rediscover aspects of myself that I had previously allowed to slip away. I started painting again, got back in touch with old acquaintances, and even went to the beach for a weekend by myself. I experienced a mixture of dread and excitement as the month's end drew near. Another part of me, which was getting stronger every day, questioned if perhaps this separation was for the best. But I still wanted to see him again to see if we could salvage what we had. I received a call from an unknown number the day before our scheduled meeting. I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years when I responded, the shaky voice of my sister. "Please don't get married to M." Suddenly, my world began to shift on its axis once more. However, that is a tale for a future update. I apologize for leaving you waiting, but I need time to think about what transpired next. I appreciate everyone listening and helping me get through this nightmare. I will return soon with additional details about the story. Update 2. My previous update was almost 11 months ago. I'm sorry for the extended silence, but I needed time to take it all in. I appreciate your support and patience, everyone. My estranged sister had just given me a startling phone call urging me not to marry M when I left off. From there, however, things only became more difficult. I met M the following day as scheduled after that enigmatic call. I knew something was seriously wrong the moment I laid eyes on him. He had black circles under his eyes and appeared gaunt. I was about to respond when he suddenly exclaimed, "I made a terrible mistake." My heart fell. My world was shattered by his next statement. With his voice hardly audible above a whisper, he admitted, I married your sister." I briefly believed I had misheard him. How was it possible for him to wed my sister? Only a month has passed since our separation. I experienced a wave of nausea as the reality set in. M then told me an absurd story that sounded like the storyline of a poorly written soap opera. My family apparently persuaded M to listen to them after I left that day. They told him stories about my early years, portraying my sister as the victim and myself as the troublemaker. What's the worst? He took them at face value. I felt offended and bewildered. Your family seemed so sincere. And I thought maybe I didn't have the full picture, M attempted to clarify. I made a foolish choice. My sister and parents had hatched a complex scheme. To avoid being made fun of by his family, they proposed that M wed my sister for the ceremony. After the commotion subsided, they could have the marriage dissolved or divorced. Despite the absurdity of the proposition, M had somehow consented while he was confused and being manipulated. Stunned into stillness, I sat. I was so deeply and profoundly betrayed that I was at a loss for words to describe how angry and heartbroken I was. I got up at last. "I never want to see you again," I stated in a remarkably composed tone. "You, my sister, my parents, you're all dead to me now." The weeks that followed were a jumble of suffering, rage, and incredulity. Unable to face the world, I took a leave of absence from my job. Despite the support of my friends, I was distraught. During this depressing time, M's mother called me out of the blue. Something compelled me to answer the phone, even though I didn't want to at first. "Please," she said in a tearful voice. "I must see you. You must be aware of something." I agreed to meet her against my better judgment. At a little park close to my place, we first met. Her eyes were red from sobbing, and she looked terrible. She disclosed the whole scope of what had happened. M had been duped by my family, who had played on his fears and fed him tales about my background. They had persuaded him that I was unstable, and that I had fabricated tales about my family in the past. But why would he believe them over me? Still having trouble understanding, I asked. Tragically, she shook her head. He had a susceptible condition. Your relatives took advantage of the fact that your abrupt departure had unsettled him. She clarified that M's family had opposed the hurried union with my sister. Despite their attempts to dissuade him, M had carried out the plan while in a confused and manipulated state. And now? I inquired, fearing the response. Your sister won't get a divorce from him. By threatening to demand a large amount of alimony if he attempts to leave her, she has been dragging the marriage along. However, the disclosures did not end there. She informed me that my sister had told them the truth about everything a few days prior while intoxicated. She acknowledged that all they had told him about me was false, and that they had trapped him. She even came clean about the essay that had been taken all those years ago. Her words, M has been devastated since then. He'd like to speak with you. He claims that he made the most significant error of his life and is unsure of how he would ever be able to apologize. Perhaps you can speak and decide what to do next, he hopes. With my head spinning from all this new knowledge, I gazed at her. I felt somewhat vindicated because the truth had finally surfaced. However, a greater portion of me was just worn out. Well, I answered in a stern tone. Thank you for sharing all of this with me, but M and I are no longer a we. He decided. Regardless of their marital status, he is now my sister's husband. I refuse to interfere or assist him in getting out of this situation. When I said this, she sobbed and begged me to change my mind, but I refused, telling her, my decision is final. I've moved on from that phase of my life. I'm unable to reopen those wounds. She texted me several times over the course of the following few days, urging me to speak with M, but I didn't reply. All of this was too much for me to handle anymore. I thought a lot about everything that had happened, including the life I had nearly committed to, the man I thought I knew who had deceived me so profoundly, and the family that had never really welcomed me. And I came to the crucial realization that I was stronger than everything. At that moment, I decided to use my experience as a springboard rather than a setback. I had been granted another opportunity to live my life as I had always desired, free from the burdens of my past. With fresh energy, I pushed myself back into my work. In order to resolve my trust difficulties and the residual pain from my family's betrayal, I began therapy. I became closer to my pals and was even more grateful for the family I had chosen for myself. And what do you know? Things improved. It wasn't always easy, and on some days, I felt like the hurt and rage would get the better of me. But I gradually began to recover. I can state with confidence that I'm in a better place than I've ever been after 10 months. I've taken up new interests, gotten promoted at work, and even resumed dating, albeit informally and much more cautiously. Ever since that day in the park with M's mother, I haven't heard from M or my family. I'm thankful they're no longer in my life, but occasionally I wonder what happened to them. They are responsible for the repercussions of their own acts. I want all of you out there who may be experiencing anything similar to know that things get better. You are stronger than you realize, even though it may not feel like it right now. Never allow a friend, family member, or romantic partner to make you feel less valuable than you actually are. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their support along this trip. This is going to be my last update on the matter. This chapter of my life is coming to an end, and I'm looking forward to many more joyful ones. Cheers to fresh starts, selected families, and the inner strength we discover when we need it most. Story 6. A Recipe for Disaster. My boyfriend, 28M, and I, 22F, met at work 2 years ago. Technically, I was working part-time during undergrad, and he was a customer, but after a couple of months, we started going out. I really love this man, and nothing has happened on this scale before, so I'm very confused about it. My boyfriend has a very tight group of friends. I am well acquainted with them and their girlfriends. One of them, Dave, is married to Ellie. Ellie is an excellent cook and often hosts dinners, and everyone brings a dessert to those dinners. I am the youngest in the group, so most times they brush off my requests for contributing or bringing in a dessert. However, The last time I asked Dave and Ellie if they wanted anything extra, like wine or some sweet dish for dinner, they said I could bring one of those sweet dishes I make for my boyfriend. I'm Indian, and even though I can't cook as well as my mom and I'm in a different country for studies, I called my mom up and had her teach me properly how to make a specific Bengali sweet, which is my favorite. I had my friends taste it, and they said it was great. My boyfriend ate some and said it was excellent. Last night I greeted Ellie and kept the dish in the kitchen. When the food was brought out and my boyfriend told everyone I made it, I saw that someone had added cinnamon powder to the sweet. You never have the sweet with cinnamon powder. The dessert tasted like cinnamon, and I felt horrible. Though everyone said thank you and it was good, I think my face gave it away. My boyfriend then took me aside and said that Ellie had told him that my sweet looked too white and thought some cinnamon might bring some color into it. I don't know. I just felt awful and I started to tear up. My boyfriend then defended Ellie and said that his friends already think I'm a child and not to make a big deal of this, and we would talk about it. I told him Ellie asked him first. Couldn't he have told her not to add cinnamon to the sweet? He told me he didn't think it was a big deal and asked me to drop the topic on the way home. I didn't text him good night, and this morning he said he was sorry and said my crying made him feel like an awful person. I don't know now. I think I overreacted. Some of OP's comments to a now deleted comment. Thank you. It was Rosagola. I even had my mom ask our local sweet shop what quantity they used for the sizes of Rosagola. I had managed the sweet to taste a lot like the sweet shops, so that's why I was so upset. If it tasted bad, I wouldn't have cried. Commenter. Actually, you should have asked right at the table why there is cinnamon added to your dessert. Not in a shout-complain way to make a scene, but to make it clear your dessert was spoiled and your contribution was pretty much sabotaged. Don't cover other people if it's on them, not you. OP's reply. I didn't want to embarrass Ellie or my BF, plus I didn't know who added the cinnamon during dinner, and I was too upset to even talk. Commenter. So your boyfriend doesn't defend you, and apparently all his friends think you're a child, which he also doesn't defend you against. He's also got 6 years on you. Dude's nearing 30. Does your boyfriend often treat you like a child? Does your boyfriend usually defend his friends when they do something like this? Does your boyfriend defend you at all? He should feel like an awful person. He is an awful boyfriend. OP's reply. I usually just hang around my boyfriend's friends during these dinners. I admit I feel a little left out because they all have been friends for so long, and I'm from a different culture, but they have never said any outright offensive thing to me. My boyfriend doesn't treat me like a child. He mentioned before that due to my age, his friends see me like a much younger sister, so I guess that's why he said it. I don't know. I'm kind of rethinking his words. Commenter. You should really have a round with your BF in Bengal. We don't have GFs or housewives. We have queens of the house. He needs to understand the Bengali household hierarchy. OP's reply. There is no way I am going to tell this to my ma. She already has reservations about my BF due to the age gap and the fact that he is not Bengali, but thank you. Your comment cracked me up. A lighter comment. I know. I was horrified and I had to eat it and act like nothing happened at the dinner table to not cause a scene. Traumatized by cinnamon rosagola was not on my bingo card this year. Top comment. BF saying, everyone thinks you're a child, and him saying, we'll talk about this later, is him telling you he thinks you're a child. Girl, tell him you're tired of hanging out with judgmental old farts and you're going to go find people younger and cooler to be with. Please don't think this guy hung the moon. Mini update. Ellie saw this post. My boyfriend texted me to see if it was me. I said yes. He said we needed to talk. For safety purposes, my best friend will be here. I don't know. I never expected my post to blow up. Update post. He said he needed space from the relationship. I think with the way this post blew up and what happened because of a post, I should clear up some things. I never asked if I should leave my boyfriend for this. I asked if this was an overreaction. My crying. But having thousands of people tell me this was racially charged. Ellie wanted power, my BF is shitty, etc. My brain went haywire. BF called yesterday, and when I got there, his house with my best friend Dave and Ellie were there. Ellie was crying and Dave looked really pissed at me. My BF told me to sit down, and Dave started with how I could make a post that most of the people in the dinner party would recognize and know and could shame Ellie and my BF. My BF was silent and wouldn't even look at me and was only shaking his head. It felt like I was a kid being scolded by my parents with my elder sibling disappointed in my actions. That is what I felt, and it looked. I admit it was very spineless of me, but Dave went on for like a minute, and I was just looking at my BF waiting for him to defend me. I asked Ellie, why would she alter my dish after telling me to bring an Indian dish? She said she thought Indian food would be brown. This woman has more Indian friends than me, and she thinks Indian food is brown. She grew up in the UK, for goodness sake, and I felt so defeated. The comments my friends and people around me telling me his friends came first to him, not me. He said he didn't think the sweet was a big deal. I told him I would never let my friend alter something he spent 3 days learning, getting people to taste it, and got his mom involved in. He saw I put a lot of effort into it, so why let her alter it? Why couldn't he ask me? Ellie started to cry and say that she wasn't being racist and she wouldn't know that I put effort into it and now she couldn't host dinners again. I said I used fake names, so why does it matter unless she and Dave went around telling people? My BF told me he didn't expect this from me. My best friend piped up that he expected that my BF would have a effing spine. So I guess they were both disappointed. My now ex-boyfriend told me in front of Dave and Ellie that he needs some space. I told him to get lost. I don't know what my best friend said to him after that, considering I left my BF's flat. I kind of tripped in the metro station, so now I'm crying on my best friend's couch with an ice pack while his BF keeps giving me peach schnapps and my relationship has toppled over. I wouldn't have stormed out had he looked at me once. He just looked 100% on Dave and Ellie's side and acted like I was the one with the problem when she caused me hurt. If his friends come first when they cause me hurt, where would I have been if I decided to marry this man? My friends are good to me and are acting like I'm some fragile glass. I even heard my best friend and his brother whispering loudly from the kitchen, and his elder brother wanting to threaten him via Insta DMs. I hate that this has come to this, considering I have always been the mom friend to my friend group. I'm drunk while writing this, so have some grace in the comments. Also, if you'll be an incel like those people in my DMs telling me I'll never keep a man if I'm this dramatic, please go away. I just thought I needed to update. That's it. Thanks, guys. Edit. This is the first time I've faced what y'all have been calling racism. To be honest, I didn't see Ellie putting cinnamon into my rosogola as racism. I was just hurt that my days of hard work were ruined. That's it. I understand. I need to work on my self-esteem and not let people walk over me. My best friend's elder brother, he's a doctor, and is super pissed at my ex because he didn't know what happened, booked an appointment with a therapist he knows as he thinks I need mental help to not normalize aggressive behavior. I'm sorry for ranting on Reddit, but I guess that's where I am. Both my best friend and I will be going. He had been there for some time before, and the situation is tense at home because Dada, Bestie's brother, didn't know what was happening and tore my friends a new one for not protesting when Dave said to me, I still haven't told him it was over a Reddit post and that I'm writing here. I feel awful, and I don't know how to tell my mom she was right. I wish I never went out with him. One of my ex's friends from the dinner party asked me if I really left my ex over a dessert. So, I guess that's what he told people. It hurts. I know it shouldn't, but it hurts. I think it is partially my fault. I shouldn't have let myself be treated like this. There were signs, and I ignored them. And now I think I'll never have another relationship because it feels like a horrible, anxious feeling. Some of OP's comments. The older brother who is a doctor and is taking the time to make sure that your mental health is okay. Sounds like he cares more about you than Dave or anyone at the dinner party. OP's reply. He does. Never doubted that. He is also very mad at me for drinking too much and at his brother for hiding the fact that my ex was an unspecified bad thing. I actually am grateful to him and my best friend for being a very strong support system. Commenter. Completely unrelated thing. BTW. Brown rosagolas exist in India too. They're not as sweet as the white kind, so I prefer the white ones. OPs. Reply. I was thinking of making gur rosagolas. They are brown and tastier in my opinion. I think maybe if I had made them, this whole mess wouldn't have happened. Commenter. I'm really curious what this dessert is that takes 3 days to make. Drop a link to a recipe. OPs. Reply. It does not take 3 days to make. I practiced 3-4 times, and because I'm not a professional sweet maker, it took me almost 6 hours all 3 days to properly make the shana, or the correct amount of cardamom to put into the milk for a little cardamom taste. It takes a lot of time, and you can find a lot of YouTube videos on rosagolas. Commentaire. I say date the best friend. Dada knows how to treat a woman, and he seemed royally pissed at what happened to her. Going as far as to get her therapy. I've had best friends and their family as mine before, and I know they've never gone that far to help me. Is it just me? Or is it a little more than family to get so angry on her behalf and try to help her mental health? OP's reply. My best friend is gay and is very much in love with his BF. That's the reason he was in therapy for some time. He has faced homophobia in our home country and needed counseling, and that's why his brother is overprotective of both of us. Where OP is from, for those curious, I'm from West Bengal but not Kolkata, though I have spent a couple of years of my childhood there. To a different commenter, I am from a district that shares a border with Bangladesh, and both sets of my grandparents were from there. New update post. I'm again grateful for the barrage of supportive messages and chiding I've received from the internet after the cinnamon fiasco and my post causing a breakup. I am updating because I felt like I should just update about recent events. And honestly, after just more than 2 weeks, I have started to feel good about myself, even though I feel like whenever I remember my ex. I really, really hope I can put this whole thing to rest, and I don't have to update again for my sanity. Firstly, my ex called a few times last week. I had blocked him earlier, literally like 2 days after breaking up. And whenever he called my friends, they wouldn't pick up either. I wanted to handle this matter gracefully. And unlike what some people commented, no, I did not want my issues all over the internet and did not understand what was happening. I just wanted some advice on how to deal with my emotions and didn't want my friends to be mad at my then-boyfriend. Thankfully, the trash took itself out. I still don't know if Ellie was racially motivated or if she just hated me. I don't even care now. I don't want a man who makes his friends scold me and humiliate me. I know I deserve to be at least somebody's first choice. My ex came to my best friend's flat. I don't live there. And from what I heard from my bestie's boyfriend, he said he was very sorry, and he now felt like I didn't deserve to be treated like that. He had thought when he broke up with me that I was overreacting, and it was just a small thing I made a big deal out of. But then a few of his friends explained to Ellie that it definitely was a horrible thing to do and told my ex he was a bad word. Huh? Who knew he had nice friends too? My ex didn't say anything more after that. He was just sorry, and he said he doesn't want more hurt between us. I have decided to not contact him. I'm just done. A lecture from my mother on dating idiot men and crying every night for over a week has made me lethargic. And on top, I am fending off Dada, Bestie's elder brother, insisting that I move in with them for some time because I'm not eating well. My dad said it's okay if I do. My family trusts my bestie and his family a lot. Needless to say, my work and studies are suffering. I haven't heard from Ellie or Dave, and I don't intend to. The person who asked me if I left my ex over a dessert, I told her what happened, and she was appalled. I don't know what she told my ex. For him to apologize. Honestly, I'm so done with that group. I went to one therapy session, and I didn't feel good. I know I have to keep going for it to actually help me, but I can't help feeling so down. I have never been so emotionally low in my life, and I am officially not dating for the foreseeable future. I am planning a trip with friends after my final semester of my master's, and I really hope I don't bring the mood down for my friends who have been so supportive and have always made me feel I have family, even though I'm away from home. I don't know what I would have done without having my best friend and his boyfriend, who keep telling me to drink the pain away. And Dada keeps on talking about the negative effects of becoming an alcoholic. Overall, I'm closing this chapter, and I don't think I'll need to update again. I'm not ever talking again to Dave and Ellie or my ex, so I don't expect any more drama. I just want to settle down to work and graduate properly. OP clarifies, "Oh my god, I have not started drinking, guys. I rarely drink and just cry." The alcohol thing was a joke. Story 7. The Chef's Redemption. I, 32M, and my ex-fiancée Veronica, 31F, had a food truck together. We both dreamed of having our own restaurant when we first met 3 years ago while attending culinary school. While I had been working in kitchens since I was 16 to support myself, Veronica, who hailed from an affluent family, had never worked in the culinary sector prior to attending school. Despite our disparate upbringings, we clicked right away. When we first started the business, we were engaged for 2 years and dated for 6. Since I graduated, I had been saving money by working 60-hour weeks at different restaurants to accumulate cash and experience. By my 29th birthday, I had saved about $100,000. Veronica persuaded me to start with a food truck instead of continuing to save money until I could create a real restaurant. Before spending money on a complete restaurant, she suggested it would be the ideal opportunity to test our concept and develop our brand. My entire concept and idea for the food truck came from me. By fusing contemporary cooking methods with my grandmother's traditional recipes, I wanted to serve fusion cuisine. Even though Veronica didn't contribute any money, I decided to make her a 50-50 partner because she looked pleased about it, and we were engaged and hoping to get married within the year. I oversaw operations and cooking while she handled all financial matters because she had accounting knowledge from a prior position. The first year was fantastic. We discovered the ideal location next to a few office buildings, and our food was well liked by frequent patrons. We were found by local food bloggers who gave us excellent evaluations. We even made the list of the top 10 food trucks in our city. I felt like I had finally realized my dream after our accomplishment, and it was even more satisfying to do it alongside Veronica. However, after 14 months, things began to become strange. I started to see inconsistencies in our inventories. Based on our sales, supplies would run out sooner than they ought to. Veronica indicated that we might be squandering more food than we thought, or that some staff might be stealing when I brought this up to her. Since she was in charge of the books, I trusted her judgment. After that, I saw that funds appeared to be vanishing from our account. Despite making a healthy profit, we never appeared to have enough money for necessities. Veronica would become defensive and accuse me of not trusting her if I attempted to look at the books. "Do you think I'm stealing from us?" Or, "Don't you trust your future wife?" are some of the things she would say. I felt bad for even asking because of her. When one of our suppliers called to inform us that we were 3 months late on our payments, it was the tipping point. I knew we had enough revenue to support our costs, so this was illogical. I checked our business account online while Veronica was asleep. I felt ill to my stomach after discovering what I did. Veronica had been regularly moving money, often thousands of dollars at a time, from our corporate account to her personal account. The following morning, when I confronted her, she sobbed and acknowledged that she had been stealing money for months. She stated that she needed money to support Andrea, 25F, her younger sister, who was allegedly having a lot of credit card debt and didn't want their parents to find out. I tried to be understanding even though I was upset. Andrea, who occasionally assisted us with the food truck, was also like a sister to me. It was unbelievable to me that she was in such difficulties and hadn't approached us immediately. In order to discuss the matter and determine how we could assist Andrea in managing her debt, I gave her a call. However, Andrea was utterly perplexed. She said that she had no debt and that Veronica had not given her any money. Actually, she was doing very well financially and had recently received a promotion at work. Andrea was astonished when I informed her of Veronica's justification for the missing funds. Over the course of 8 months, it was discovered that Veronica had stolen about $50,000 from our company. The complex lies she had said and the way she had exploited her own sister as a cover story were more significant than the money. Her tale altered when I approached her once more. She said she wanted to surprise me, and that she had been saving the money for our wedding and a down payment on a home. She had been taking out cash at ATMs according to bank records, but the money was nowhere to be located. I promptly called off our engagement. Veronica sobbed uncontrollably, alternating between pleading for my pardon and claiming that I was exaggerating. Her parents became involved, which made matters worse. They maintained that since we were engaged and would shortly get married, it wasn't actually theft. Her father even implied that my tight control over the company funds amounted to financial abuse. In order to settle our supplier bills, I had to sell the food truck. I lost nearly everything I had accumulated because of the stolen money and the depreciated worth of a used food truck. I almost went bankrupt and was horrified. According to Veronica's parents, it was only a little financial dispute that I had exaggerated. Even some of our mutual acquaintances said I should try to make amends with her since I was being too harsh. After working at several jobs for 2 years and saving every penny, I eventually launched my own tiny restaurant 6 months ago. It's nothing special, but I own it and have total authority over it. I maintain thorough records of everything and engaged qualified accountants. The restaurant is thriving. We're already making money and receiving positive feedback. Veronica arrived during dinner service last week. She claimed to want to put things right after learning about my achievement from friends we shared in common. She said she had changed and had some money to invest, so she proposed to be partners once more. She mentioned how effectively we collaborated before to the problems and suggested that we work together to further the restaurant's success. She has persisted even after I urged her to leave after laughing incredulously. Her parents began phoning me, accusing me of being spiteful and urging me to give Veronica another chance because she was essentially family. They mentioned how she had assisted me in launching my first company and claimed that I owed her for that. I blocked their phone numbers on social media. Veronica's pals are now disparaging me and accusing me of being callous for failing to assist my ex-fiancé and getting back on their feet. Since everyone deserves a second opportunity, several mutual friends claim that I'm being too harsh and that I should at least listen to her. Update. 3 weeks have passed since my last post. Thank you to everyone who left a comment and offered encouragement. I need to get this off my chest since, regrettably, things have become much worse. Veronica and her parents started visiting my restaurant during our busiest times after I blocked them. Initially, Veronica was the only one, ordering water while seated alone at a corner table. She would remain for hours looking at me every time I went by. Some clients observed the tension, and my employees began to feel uneasy. Her parents then joined in. They would only order the cheapest items on the menu and occupy a large table that could seat 6 people during our Friday and Saturday dinner rush. They would try to wave me down every time I passed, screaming things like, "This is no way to treat your future in-laws," or "We're family, you can't ignore us forever," loud enough for the customers around to hear. At first, I made an effort to manage things professionally. My host seated them in less conspicuous locations and told the employees to handle them just like any other patron. However, they went too far last week. During dinner service, Veronica's father got up and began yelling at other patrons about how I had taken their daughter's business ideas and left her when she needed assistance. There was a commotion when I had to ask them to leave. Only after I threatened to call the police did they go. The following day, I began to see odd internet evaluations to submit unfavorable evaluations about my restaurant. Someone had set up several accounts. They said we served bad food, had rats in the kitchen, and had major health code breaches. The fact that certain reviews brought up particular instances from our food truck days that only she would be aware of, such as the time we had to close early due to a generator failure, and that she twisted into a tale about food contamination, was what gave Veronica away. My business began to suffer from the phony reviews. Our lunch attendance significantly shrank, and I experienced multiple cancellations of reservations. Veronica was served with a cease and desist letter by the lawyer I hired, who specialized in defamation matters. In response, she posted on many sites and made more fictitious accounts. At that moment, an unforeseen event occurred. Veronica's sister, Andrea, visited my restaurant after it had closed. She claimed she was unable to remain silent any longer and was clearly agitated. She disclosed that Veronica never provided assistance to anyone using the pilfered funds. She had been concealing her gambling addiction for years. Andrea claims that before we even met, Veronica had been going to underground casinos. Although she was able to conceal it effectively, her losses had been increasing. She immediately used the $50,000 she took from our food truck business to settle debts related to gambling. 2 years prior, when Andrea found Veronica unconscious in her apartment, with threatening messages from loan sharks on her phone, she had learned of this. Andrea proved everything to me with pictures, text messages, and bank statements. Veronica has been controlling everyone in her vicinity. She had even convinced their parents that she needed the money for our wedding preparations, so she had stolen it. She had previously gambled away her savings, which is why she hadn't contributed any funds to our food truck. It was troubling why Andrea hadn't stepped out sooner. She had been blackmailed by Veronica. Although their conservative parents were unaware of it, Andrea was seeing a lady. If Andrea ever told their parents the truth about the gambling, Veronica had vowed to expose her. When Andrea realized that Veronica's behavior was ruining my new company, she eventually made the decision to notify me since she could no longer bear the guilt. I informed our common acquaintances, who had been disparaging me on social media, of this knowledge. Many expressed shock and apologies for making assumptions about me before hearing the whole tale. Many recalled giving Veronica loans that she never paid back, constantly citing various justifications, such as unexpected costs. Veronica's parents, meanwhile, continued to live in denial. They accused Andrea of lying to conceal her own lifestyle choices when she attempted to provide proof of Veronica's gaming. They are now accusing me of being cruel for disseminating false information about Veronica's alleged addiction and of manipulating Andrea into turning against her sister. When some of Veronica's contacts from the casino began to visit my restaurant, the situation became even more difficult. They weren't subtle individuals, and other patrons felt uneasy around them. One of them cornered me in the parking lot after closing last week and said, I ought to be more giving to my ex-fiancée to keep an eye on the property during business hours. I had to hire a security guard. Because of all this commotion, my business is getting hurt. I've had to pay for security and legal fees, and our weekday dinner service has decreased by 30%. However, I'm not going to back down. We are getting ready to file a lawsuit against Veronica and anyone else attempting to harm my company, and my lawyer is compiling proof of harassment and defamation. I know that giving Veronica money will just make her conduct worse. Yet some people have urged that I do so to make this stop. Instead of supporting her and making excuses for her behavior, she needs professional therapy for her gambling addiction. Part of the reason I'm giving this update is to alert others to the ways addiction may lead to manipulation and harm to those closest to the addict. I'm concentrating on safeguarding my company and my staff for the time being. I've started recording every event and added more security cameras. I've also warned other local business owners about the possibility of harassment. My true friends have come to light as a result of this circumstance, and I'm appreciative to those who have supported me during this chaos. Update 2. 2 months have passed since my last update, and what I have in store for you feels like something from a horrible movie. A man named Michael, 35M, entered my restaurant during prep time and asked to speak with me alone, just when I believed I had exposed all of Veronica's lies. He identified himself as the current legal husband of Veronica, not her ex-husband. I initially believed that this was just another effort at harassment, but Michael had data to support my claims. He gave me their 7-year-old marriage certificate, pictures from their wedding, and court documents detailing his efforts to find Veronica 5 years ago after she vanished with their money. Since Veronica had never formally divorced him, our engagement was a sham. Michael told his story over lunch. He married young after being in love with Veronica in high school. They opened a tiny bakery in a different state with their wedding funds and a loan from his parents. Does that sound familiar? Veronica maxed out their credit cards, cleared out their accounts, and disappeared after 2 years of what appeared to be a prosperous business. She only left a note expressing her sense of being stuck in the marriage. In addition to the divorce, Michael spent years trying to find her because she had ruined his family. In order to repay the company loans they co-signed, his parents had to sell their home. The time was ideal. 3 months before she met me at culinary school, Veronica vanished from Michael's life. When I brought up the topic of actually choosing a wedding date, she always had an excuse since she had changed her last name, but had never formally divorced him. Michael's story made me feel physically ill. Veronica wasn't being sentimental or pragmatic when she recommended that we elope or expressed a desire for a small private wedding ceremony. Legally, she was unable to wed me. She had previously stolen money from our food truck business, but this was her most recent theft. Surprisingly, Veronica revealed everything when I texted her to confront her about Michael, but she twisted the story as Veronica always does. She said Michael had been abusive and domineering. Michael, however, showed me police records he had submitted, which demonstrated that she was the one who was abusing him, and that she had to steal the money in order to get away. Veronica said that she had intended to divorce Michael in the end, and that she had kept her marriage a secret from me out of protection. After hours of note comparing, Michael and I discovered that Veronica had been operating the same fraud in several places. She would connect with someone who wanted to launch a food-related business, get access to their money, and then drain their accounts. As far as we know, she had done this at least 4 times. Together with Michael's attorney, my attorney is currently constructing a fraud case against Veronica. At last, Michael is able to serve her with divorce documents. The fact that this seems to be a pattern of intentional illegal activity across several states is another reason why the authorities are interested. When further victims began contacting us, it was the biggest shock. Michael published my original Reddit post in forums for company owners after discovering it. 3 other individuals came forward with comparable accounts of Veronica. Even while she was still living with Michael, she was engaged to one. Every story had the same pattern. She would become part of their life, win their trust by falling in love, and then take whatever she could. When Veronica's parents found out about her prior marriage, they eventually stopped supporting her. When her mother arrived at my restaurant in tears, she said she didn't know who her daughter was. However, they have just vanished without offering me an apology for their harassment and accusations. Andrea claims that in order to settle some of Veronica's gambling debts, they have deactivated their social media accounts, ceased frequenting the restaurant, and mortgaged their home. Since we called the police, the casino staff has also retreated. It turns out that some of them didn't want the spotlight and were operating an illegal gambling enterprise. Veronica owes them more than $200,000. We found out she had been trying to recover her losses by spending the money she had stolen from me and other people, but she had only ended up losing more. At last, things are returning to normal at my restaurant. Regular consumers are coming back now that the phony reviews have been taken down. This strange experience has made me buddies with Michael. He even promised to assist me in growing my company after the legal matters are resolved. He stated that he hopes this entire fiasco would lead to something positive. I'm still amazed at how meticulously Veronica organized everything. She made up whole false personas and life tales in addition to lying about minor details. Since they discovered anomalies in her application materials, the culinary school where we met is currently looking into the matter. Her entire existence seems to have been based on falsehoods. Update 3. This will most likely be my final update as it has been 6 months since my last post. Last month, Veronica was taken into custody in Las Vegas. She apparently ran away there after all the information was made public and attempted to con a casino owner with the same ruse. She was obviously unaware that casino owners spoke with one another, and one of them knew who she was from the warnings that had been going around. Under a different fictitious name, the cops discovered her residing at an inexpensive motel. She had 5 different IDs and credit cards in different names when she was arrested. Notebooks describing her prior scams, including the one she perpetrated on me, were also discovered. She had everything in writing, including when to start collecting money, how to build trust, and how long to wait before proposing a business opportunity. Everything was organized like a business plan. She faces many fraud charges from the district attorney in multiple states. In addition to Michael and me, they discovered at least 7 more victims. While she was still legally married to Michael, she was also engaged to 2 of them. She has taken about $800,000 in total throughout the years. She could face severe jail time. Andrea now frequents my restaurant on a regular basis. She moved in with her girlfriend in a nearby apartment after coming out to her parents and being shunned. Ironically, she now assists me with the books, carrying out the task her sister was meant to perform. In addition to being far more skilled at it, she is also honest. We occasionally discuss Veronica and attempt to determine whether there were any indicators that we overlooked, but our main goal is to move on. Last week, Veronica's parents finally spoke out. They actually sent me a handwritten letter, not a text or email. Although it wasn't quite an apology, I thought it may be. They wrote about how their love for their kid blinded them and how they failed to raise her properly in order to pay off the obligations Veronica had accrued in their names. They acknowledged having to sell their home and relocate to a smaller space. Not for their benefit, but so they might have a relationship with their future grandkids, if I ever had any. They asked if I could find it in my heart to forgive them. I didn't answer. There are some issues that cannot be resolved verbally, and I have no desire to keep up any relationship with them. They only expressed regret once they became victims themselves, supported Veronica's actions for years, and attacked my character after I revealed her thievery. In fact, all of this has made Michael and I close friends. He recently launched a new bakery in the community, and we are discussing the possibility of working together on future initiatives. We both concur that we must not allow Veronica's actions to deter us from putting our faith in others and going for our goals. Now more than ever, my restaurant is doing well. In fact, more customers came in as a result of the attention surrounding Veronica's arrest in an attempt to torment me. Some even want to sit at the famous table where she used to wait for hours. I now make fun of it with my employees, but we've also put strong security measures in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Although the legal proceedings are still going on, I'm not giving them any more attention. I have provided the prosecutors with the required statements and supporting paperwork. I'm done allowing Veronica to occupy space in my life, but her actions will be held against her in court. I occasionally reflect on how things might have gone differently if I had allowed myself to be manipulated by her and given her another chance. Like she did with the food truck, she most likely would have emptied my new restaurant as well. Rather, I followed my gut and refused to back down. I've discovered that getting even or disproving others isn't always the best form of retaliation. It's about turning a bad experience into something good. I've made real friends, my restaurant is doing well, and I'm at last at peace with all that has transpired. For anyone experiencing a similar situation, follow your instincts, document everything, and avoid being coerced into disregarding warning signs. Certain individuals reveal their true selves to you. Trust them the first time. Story 8. The Grandfather's Legacy. I, 28F, am in dire need of guidance regarding my wedding circumstances. Family drama has made what could have been a great situation into a total nightmare. I'll start from the beginning to help you understand how we got here because there's a lot to unpack. I grew up in what I believe to be a happy family as an only child. Weekend excursions with my parents, family game evenings, and my dad teaching me how to ride a bike are all part of my early recollections. He was the type of father who would construct tree houses for me and ward off monsters beneath my bed. He was my hero. But when I was 14, everything changed. The day my parents sat me down and announced their impending divorce is still fresh in my mind. Mom had discovered that Dad was having an affair with his coworker, Laura, 42F. Dad and Laura were married 6 months after the divorce was finalized. At that point, I got to know Aaron, 25M, Laura's son, from a prior marriage. The change wasn't simple. Suddenly, I had a stepbrother after being an only child. My dad took it upon himself to be Aaron's ideal father figure when his biological father abandoned him when he was a little child. I initially found it admirable that Dad was assisting a child in need of a father. I was unaware that this would ultimately result in the death of my own father. Although slow, the alterations persisted. Aaron's baseball schedule became the focal point of our Sunday father-daughter breakfasts, which evolved into family breakfasts. My dad used to attend all of my dance recitals, but he started missing them because Aaron had practices or games. Despite having no baseball knowledge, he even joined Aaron's squad as assistant coach. My mother remarried David, a good man who had a job offer in another state when I was 16. Despite everything, I wanted to be near my dad, so I chose to stay when they asked if I wanted to relocate with them. In retrospect, I wish I had chosen differently. My final year of college was the true turning moment. One rainy night, I was hit by another automobile that ran a red light while I was traveling home due to intestinal bleeding. I needed emergency surgery. David and Mom flew in right away, but my dad? He texted me to let me know that Aaron was having a breakdown over his girlfriend ending their relationship, so he couldn't go. I was in the hospital for 3 days, and he never once came up. I concentrated on creating my own life after graduation. At work, I met Mike, 30M, the new IT manager, and we became friends because we both enjoy hiking and classic sci-fi films. He proposed to us on a sunrise hike to our favorite location after 3 years of dating. It was ideal, and I felt as though my life was finally coming together for the first time. We sent out invitations 6 months in advance and decided to get married on October 15th of this year. I debated whether or not to ask Dad to escort me down the aisle for weeks. He was still my father in spite of everything, and I secretly hoped that this would be our opportunity to mend our relationship. A month prior to the wedding, I made the decision to hold off and surprise him with the request. However, Dad called me to lunch before I could ask him. He avoided making eye contact and appeared anxious. At last, he revealed the shocking news. Dad had already agreed to be Aaron's best man, and Aaron was getting married on October 15th. I had the impression that I had been punched in the stomach. I asked Aaron why he picked the same day, and he told me it was the day he and his fiancée initially met 2 years prior. I mentioned that Aaron was aware of our date, and that we had sent out our invitations months prior. Dad's reaction? Since my venue was more flexible, while Aaron's was extremely exclusive, he recommended that I change my date. I wouldn't alter our date. Deposits had already been made, invitations had been sent, and relatives were traveling in from abroad. Dad accused me of being self-centered and disregarding Aaron's sentiments when I attempted to explain this. He claimed that because Aaron never had a real father figure, he needed him more. When my grandfather, Mom's father, learned the situation, it blew out. He and I have always been close, particularly since my parents' divorce. He offered to take me down the aisle right away since he was upset with my dad. Then Dad made an unexpected announcement. He said he would give his vacation home to Mike and me as a wedding present. It is a stunning waterfront property that we have always appreciated. Dad abruptly changed his mind. He contacted me and said he could make both weddings work. Showing up at my reception to dance with me after serving as Aaron's best man at the ceremony. He began accusing me of destroying the family and forcing him to make a decision when I didn't agree right away. Karma, however, had other ideas. It seems that Aaron did not ask Dad to his wedding 2 weeks prior. Aaron wanted his biological father to be his best man instead. According to Dad, who called me in tears, assuming he could just lead me down the aisle as if nothing had happened, Dad was now free to take part in every aspect of my wedding. No, I told him. Given his extraordinary generosity, I didn't want to upset my grandfather by denying him this moment because he had stepped up. When Dad stepped out, Dad went totally crazy. He began shouting that I was being deceived by my grandfather, that I was selling my loyalty for a house, and that I was putting money before family. I blocked his number after hanging up on him. His whole family is now accusing me of being materialistic and callous. Dad is hurting. Therefore, my stepmother Laura says I should be more compassionate since he's now available. Even some of my friends believe I'm being too harsh and that I should give him another try. However, I don't believe I'm mistaken. This goes beyond the wedding. It's about years of being viewed as Aaron's second best friend and having my needs and feelings ignored in favor of Aaron. Since he's only coming to me since his first choice didn't work out, why should I give him this unique moment? So, Reddit, even if my dad is now available, am I wrong for not letting him lead me down the aisle? By picking my grandfather, who gave us a house, over my father, am I being materialistic? I'd greatly benefit from an independent viewpoint on this. Update 1. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone for their encouraging words and remarks. I feel more sure now about my choice, thanks to all of you. However, since my previous post, a lot has transpired, and I must tell you about the mayhem that occurred during my wedding rehearsal. Yesterday, the rehearsal was set to begin at our location at 5 o'clock p.m. It was going well. The ladies were practicing their steps. Mike's nephew was performing admirably as our ring bearer, and my granddad was rehearsing, leading me down the aisle. Then, my father unexpectedly arrived. We didn't notice him at first. He crept into the rear of the venue and observed from the sidelines. He didn't start yelling until we were in the middle of the second practice, yelling that this was all wrong and that he was my real father who had a greater right to be there than my grandfather. He rushed down the aisle and shoved past my bridesmaids. Bless him, my grandfather made an effort to remain composed. Protectively, he moved in front of me and beckoned Dad away. Dad became even more irate. As a result, he began bringing up old family history, saying that my grandfather had never liked him and that the house offer had turned me against him. He even claimed that my grandfather was attempting to purchase his way into the position of father of the bride. The worst thing, Dad could not stand up straight and his sentences were slurred, so it was obvious he had been drinking. Before venue security arrived, Dad attempted to physically shove my grandfather away from me after Mike phoned them. Fortunately, Mike's brother intervened and restrained him. The entire event was terrifying. My mom was taping everything in case we needed proof for a restraining order. My bridesmaids were stunned, and my flower girls were crying. Dad started yelling at me as security escorted him out, saying that I was dead to him and that I would regret putting money before blood. It was simultaneously heartbreaking and humiliating. However, this is when things took a surprising turn. My stepmother, Laura, had slipped in behind Dad in all the confusion. She drew me aside after he left and asked if we could speak in private. I was completely stunned by what she disclosed. Laura believes that Aaron had purposefully orchestrated this entire wedding date catastrophe. She handed me screenshots of 3 months' worth of chats between Aaron and his fiancée. Although they had talked about a number of potential wedding dates, Aaron insisted on October 15th since it was my date. He boasted in his texts that he was going to show Dad that he loved him more than I did. The really terrible thing, though, my father was aware of this. Aaron freely shared his idea with Dad in text that Laura showed me. Dad had replied that he understood Aaron's feelings and would back Aaron's decision rather than shutting it down. Knowing that I would have to reschedule my date or risk losing Aaron as a part of my ceremony, Dad even assisted Aaron in booking the location. As she showed me all of this, Laura was in tears. She claimed to have witnessed Dad's favoritism of Aaron for years, but she always justified it by telling herself that Aaron needed more help because his biological father wasn't there. But after witnessing Dad's handling of this matter, she realized how poisonous things had gotten. The family dynamic I observed was only the beginning, she disclosed. It seems that Dad has been snooping around and turning down invites to family gatherings where I would be expected, claiming that I was too busy or that I didn't want to attend. He has been giving Aaron details about my life and pushing him to match my accomplishments. In fact, when I got engaged, Dad advised Aaron to pop the question to his fiancée very far away in order to avoid falling behind. Laura expressed her sincere regret for not speaking up sooner. She claimed that she is divorcing her father because she can no longer put up with his actions, particularly after witnessing him attempt to physically threaten my grandfather at the rehearsal. She has come to the realization that Dad is actively supporting Aaron's efforts to exclude me from the family, not merely playing favorites. Despite all of this drama, I'm more sure than ever of my choice, and the wedding is tomorrow. We've hired additional security to make sure Dad can't enter the venue, and my grandfather will lead me down the aisle. I declined Mike's suggestion that we postpone if I needed more time to take it all in. I refused to let our beautiful day be ruined by Dad and Aaron's games. Some of Dad's family members continue to support him, saying that family should be together and that I'm exaggerating. I'm done feeling bad, though, after seeing those texts and seeing Dad's inebriated outburst. This is about years of emotional abuse and manipulation that I'm finally seeing clearly. It's not about the house, the money, or even who will accompany me down the aisle anymore. I just want to concentrate on my wedding for the time being, but Laura stated she would testify if I wanted a restraining order. My grandfather, mom, stepdad, and my wonderful fiancé are all on my side. Perhaps it is all the family I require. If something noteworthy occurs after the wedding, I'll provide another update. Before the big day, I need to try to get some sleep right now. Again, I want to thank everyone for their support. You have no idea how much it means. Update 2. This is more twisted than I could have imagined. But here we are. Any reservations I had about removing my dad from my life have been totally dispelled by what I'm going to reveal. My grandfather escorted me down the aisle. Mike's vows brought everyone to tears of joy, and the additional security made sure there were no unwelcome disruptions. Everything about my wedding went flawlessly. Even our first married holiday was spent at my grandfather's lake house, which is now our official residence. However, I received a call from my cousin Amy yesterday. As Laura's niece, she went to Aaron's wedding, and what she told me completely upended everything. Do you recall how Dad said Aaron declined his invitation and went with his biological father? It was an outright falsehood. Amy claims that Aaron never asked Dad not to come. In reality, it was far more deliberate. 3 months before the wedding, Aaron's biological father, who had been gone all of his life, unexpectedly made a reappearance. We're talking about an $80,000 celebration at a prestigious vineyard, and he felt bad for leaving Aaron. As a way to make things right, he volunteered to cover the entire wedding. Dad felt intimidated when Aaron's biological father offered to cover half of Aaron's wedding expenses, which came to almost $40,000. It drove him insane that he couldn't match that degree of generosity. Dad viewed Aaron's reconnection with his biological father as competition, rather than a positive development. The actual kicker, Dad decided not to attend the wedding himself. He informed Aaron that if the biological father was covering all of the costs, he would not go. In fact, he attempted to force Aaron to choose between having Dad serve as his best man and having his ideal wedding paid for. Dad yelled at Aaron when he decided to have the wedding paid for, of course. However, he made up the excuse about not being invited rather than telling me this. He believed that by playing the victim, he would win my sympathy and be able to lead me down the aisle. He was attempting to get into mine by using Aaron's wedding as leverage. Things worsen. Videos from Aaron's wedding reception that Amy showed me showed Dad watching from the parking lot in the background. He watched the celebration through the windows of the venue for hours while he sat in his car. No one wanted to cause a commotion by alerting security, but a few attendees observed and felt uneasy. What Dad has been telling everyone about my grandfather's gift is the most annoying thing. He is circulating allegations among the family that I looked around for a partner and offered my grandfather's house to the person who showed the greatest interest in me. He's telling people that I deceived my grandfather into giving up his land and that he's getting old. On social media, some family members have started making crude remarks about our wedding pictures since they even think he's real. A relative wrote, "It's sad how some people trade family loyalty for material gain. I hope the house was worth losing your father over," said another uncle. I drove to Dad's house because I was so furious and wanted to tell him everything I knew. A bad concept. Rather than offering an apology or even acknowledging it, he attempted to defend his behavior. He said that by inventing the tale of Aaron not inviting him, he was testing my loyalty. He said that regardless of the house gift, I would have demanded that he escort me down the aisle if I truly loved him. Then, because Aaron is also related, he had the gall to insist that Aaron receive a portion of my grandfather's present, because it's not fair that Aaron receives nothing and I received such a great present. He genuinely proposed that we sell the lake house and divide the proceeds. He threatened to challenge the property transfer in court when I declined. I was both relieved and appalled when I left his place. I just know that I made the proper choice every time I learned something new. After that, Laura called me and told me that ever since my grandfather made the gift announcement, Dad has been obsessed with the lake house. He and Aaron apparently thought I would allow them to use it for weekend fishing excursions, since we're family. Because of Dad's disparaging remarks about my grandfather and me, I've made the decision to have my attorney write him a cease and desist letter. In order to defend himself against Dad's untrue statements on his mental health, my grandfather is also investigating his legal alternatives. Aaron has been tweeting passive-aggressively about fake family members and gold diggers on social media, but he hasn't spoken to me directly. He and anyone who backs his and Dad's story have been blocked by me. I'm concentrating on getting settled in our new house with Mike and attempting to put all of this turmoil behind us right now, but I'll give you another update if anything important occurs. Update 3. I have finally found a solution that makes me feel at peace, so this will be my last update. I've decided to stop communicating with my dad and his side of the family entirely in light of the turmoil and disclosures of the last few months. It has been a wild ride for the last 3 months. As I indicated in my previous post, Dad did attempt to challenge the transfer of the lake house. He launched a lawsuit arguing that he ought to have some influence on my grandfather's property choices because he is my father. After my grandfather produced copious records attesting to his mental capacity and his explicit desire to transfer the land to Mike and me, his attorney finally abandoned the case. When Dad lost the court battle, his response was explosive. When he arrived at my place of employment, he created such a commotion that my employer had to bar him from the building. He yelled that I had stolen his retirement dream, implying that he and Aaron had intended to use the lake house as a fishing hideaway. Our restraining order documentation now includes the security footage of his outburst. Even more information about Dad's actions over the years was made public during Laura's divorce procedures. She discovered emails in which he and Aaron would purposefully schedule family get-togethers to clash with my crucial dates. They would purposefully plan events for when they knew I had obligations, then use my absence to portray me as the heartless relative. Spreadsheets were actually used to keep track of my schedule in order to generate these conflicts. The most startling revelation was found in Laura's divorce documents. It turns out that Dad had been putting money aside in a different account for years, money that was meant to be for Aaron and me. But according to the account statements, every cent was used on Aaron's schooling, vehicle, and now his wedding prior to Dad leaving. When Laura questioned this, Dad said my mom and grandfather could support me, so I didn't need the money. Aaron is also not managing the situation properly. It appears that his biological father's involvement backfired since following the wedding. He stopped answering Aaron's calls. Aaron has been attempting to get back in touch with his father, but he is too busy with the divorce and litigation to give him any attention. Aaron has been going on lengthy social media tirades about how I destroyed his family by stealing his future lake house and turning Laura against Dad. Through all of this, my grandfather, may he be blessed, has been a tremendous source of support. It has been touching to watch him and Mike connect over home renovation tasks as they work on remodeling portions of the lake house. This year, my mom, stepdad, grandfather, and a few close friends who supported us will be the only ones attending our first Christmas celebration there. Laura contacted me last week to inform me that following the completion of the divorce, she would be relocating to a different state. She thanked me for giving her the confidence to go and apologize once more for not realizing Dad's manipulation sooner. Even though we're not close, I admire her for finally confronting Dad's actions. The extended family is mainly divided into 2 groups: those who have seen through Dad's lies and those who still believe them. It seems quite liberating to have lost contact with some relatives. They are the only family I need, and the people that matter have stayed. I'm getting used to living in a lake house with Mike. I occasionally catch myself feeling depressed about Dad's situation. But then I recall all the spreadsheets, the prearranged arguments, the deception, and the manipulation. When he decided Aaron was the only child worth his time and effort, I lost him years ago, so I know I'm not losing a parent. In times of self-doubt, your messages and remarks enabled me to maintain my position. Walking away from toxic family members, including parents, might be the healthiest course of action. Sometimes the hardest option is the correct one. Story 9. My mother's obsession. My mom constantly warns my daughter will become obese, but she's actually underweight, and it's wearing me down. I have a daughter, Leah, who is 5. She's strong and healthy, but slightly underweight for her height. She's been this way since she was a toddler. She seems to take after her dad, who is also very tall and thin. Leah eats plenty of healthy food and gets lots of activity. and we see her pediatrician regularly. He has told us that her weight is not an issue as long as she continues to eat well. The problem is my mother, who is convinced my daughter is going to become obese. While I serve healthy food most of the time, I do occasionally let my daughter have McDonald's for lunch or ice cream after dinner. Every time I do this when my mother is around, she makes dire comments about how Leah is going to get fat. If Leah mentions she had a hot dog for dinner, my mom says something about the childhood obesity epidemic. If she sees me giving Leah a cookie, she shakes her head and says something about how Leah seems to be packing on the pounds. To her credit, she never says these things in front of Leah, but around me, she never stops. The thing is, I am overweight and have been since I was a kid. Not obese, but definitely heavier than I should be. Although there are a lot of reasons for this, and I know that the responsibility for my health is ultimately mine alone, I think my mother's unhealthy attitudes toward food have played a large part in my weight problems. She would tell me I was disgusting and needed to lose weight, then turn around and give me a cupcake if I had a bad day at school. Food was the enemy, but also my main source of consolation. This led to me becoming an emotional eater, a problem I still struggle with today. I have gone to therapy and made major changes in my lifestyle to become a good role model for my daughter, and I am losing my excess weight. I talk regularly with Leah about nutrition and exercise, but I refuse to place the same value judgments on food and weight that my mother did. I have told my mother repeatedly that Leah is healthy and happy and is not in danger of becoming obese, and that I want her to stop making comments. But she can't seem to help herself. I have warned her that if she starts making them in front of Leah, that I will cut her off in a heartbeat, but Leah loves her grandma, and I would hate to end their relationship over something that is really only bothering me. Can anyone think of a way to get my mom to lay off? Update. Okay, you've all convinced me that I need to put my foot down with my mom and tell her that her comments need to stop entirely, or she won't see me and Leah anymore. I'm supposed to see her tomorrow, so I'll post an update after. Thanks, Reddit. I really needed to be smacked in the face with reality, and you did it in an admirably gentle way. My mom constantly tells me my perfectly healthy daughter is going to become obese. I'm sick of hearing it, but don't know how to get her to stop. Comment from Pariah Bear 790. Maybe a trial run where your daughter does not see your mother for an extended period of time, 2 weeks or something. In the meantime, tell your mother how you feel and let that sink in for her. Right now, it's concerning comments made to you. Eventually, it will be private conversations between Leah and her grandmother. OP's reply. That is my main concern. I have told her point blank that if I ever hear her mentioning Leah's weight or eating habits to Leah, I will not hesitate to cut off contact. I will not have my daughter raised with the same eating issues I had. I do think she will respect this because she loves Leah, her only grandchild, and knows I am serious about this. OP when asked if there's any truth to the mother's comments. It's a fair question, but yes, I'm sure there isn't any truth to the comments. Leah's doctor was the one who characterized her as a little underweight. At her last checkup, she was in the 95th percentile for height, but down around the 40th percentile for weight. If a kid with those stats is considered overweight, I'd hate to see a kid they consider to be at a healthy weight. Update. Thanks for all the responses you gave me on my first post. I think I needed a dose of reality, and that's what I got. After reading all the comments, I realized I needed to talk to my mom. So, when she came over, before she had a chance to say anything about Leah's eating habits, I took her aside and said, "Enough. Leah is healthy and happy, and your weight comments are inappropriate. They stress me out, and they're bad for Leah. If you keep making them, we're just not going to see you anymore." She sputtered a bit, but ultimately agreed to my terms. I was hopeful that maybe she would actually stop making the comments so we could have a somewhat normal relationship, and she could continue to see Leah. Haha. I work a part-time schedule of 2 days per week and every other weekend. This was my working weekend, so my husband was home with Leah. When I got home after work on Sunday, I could tell something was up. Leah was already in bed, and my husband looked really tense. He's usually a pretty laid-back guy, so this was weird. When I asked what was up, he said we needed to talk about my mother. I had told him that I had spoken with her and that she had been warned not to make any more comments about Leah's weight. Well, Apparently, she just couldn't do it because she called him, knowing I was at work that day, and told him that I was blind to Leah's problem, and that he needed to get involved because I had confided in her that Leah's pediatrician told me she was at serious risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes, and that we needed to change her diet so she would lose weight. What? For the record, Leah's pediatrician has never said anything like that. In fact, as I mentioned in my last post, he has told me that she is underweight. Fortunately, my husband A attends all Leah's doctor appointments, and B has the sense to realize that a rail-thin child isn't edging toward obesity, so he knew it was bunk. He told my mom that she wasn't to call again until she heard from me. Well, I was livid. It was like after years and years of weight-related crap from my mom, something finally snapped. I called her, and the minute she said hello, I just lit into her. I told her that based on her behavior, she was either delusional or a manipulative sociopath, and that either way, she wasn't allowed around me or my kid again. I told her she was not welcome to call, email, come over, or send cards. Basically, we were going to pretend like she didn't exist. I hung up before she had a chance to get a word in edgewise. She called 15 times that night. I finally blocked her number on my cell and my husband's. We don't have a landline, so this means she can't call us at all. I had 3 emails in my inbox the next morning, which I deleted without reading before blocking her email address as well. Finally, we had given her a key to our house for emergency purposes. So, first thing yesterday, I had the locks changed, then took Leah out for the day. Lo and behold, when we came home, my neighbor said that my mom, she recognizes her because she used to come over a lot, had been banging on the door for almost half an hour earlier that day before storming off in a huff. I can only imagine how angry she was when she realized her key didn't work anymore. I feel better than I have in years, which makes me think I did the right thing. The only thing I'm still struggling with is how to break the news to Leah. She really does love Grandma. My husband and I are going to sit down with her tonight, so I guess I have until then to figure out what to say. Relevant comments. It sure didn't take long for her to not only not make comments, but to escalate it to OP's husband with lies that are easily shot down. She must be really delusional, which will most likely mean she won't back down to the no contact easily. OP's reply. This is what concerns me. If she has any grip on reality at all, she would realize that my husband wouldn't believe her lies. Either she's actually lost it or she's playing some kind of game by saying that to him. Commenter. I'm curious. What is her own relationship with food? Is she overweight? OP's reply. She's not, but she definitely doesn't have a good relationship with food. She counts every calorie and tries a lot of fad diets to keep her weight down. Her attitude, which I think she got from her own mom, is almost like weight is a moral issue. Being overweight isn't just unhealthy. It means you're a bad person. Story 10. The Sisters' Downfall. I'm Michelle, 20F, and I would greatly appreciate your feedback. Emily, 25F, is my older sister, and she is expected to marry Jonathan, 25M. Between them, everything appeared to be ideal. We all believed they were meant to be together, and they had been together for years. However, things have just taken a very odd and surprising turn, and now their wedding is in doubt. Why? My sister won't let me go to their wedding. Therefore, Jonathan has declined to marry her. Furthermore, Emily thinks Jonathan has feelings for me. I understand how crazy that sounds, but allow me to clarify. For background, I don't have a close relationship with either my parents or my sister. I kind of drifted away from them once I started college. But it's not like anything major happened to trigger a fallout. Since I moved out for school, I haven't really spent much time at home. I would usually travel or go to my grandparents' house during spring holidays rather than returning home. Simply said, it seemed like a better alternative than having to cope with the unpleasantness of being at home. The problem is that I'm not at all like my sister or parents, if it makes sense. We've never really clicked. I'm not truly a part of their universe, which is their own. They never seemed to understand me, and to be honest, they never made an effort. They would all bond over something I didn't care about while I was growing up. And it seemed like I was speaking a foreign language anytime I brought up something I was interested in. They would simply listen, nod, then returned the conversation to their own interests. So, I gave up trying after a time. But here's what hurts the most. They made no attempt to contact me as I began to distance myself from them. They seemed to be quite content with me removing myself from their lives, almost as if they were glad to see me go. To be honest, that hurt. Family members should be aware when one of their own is gradually fading away, but they didn't appear to give a damn. It simply validated my long-held belief that I didn't belong with them. I eventually only went to see them for important occasions like birthdays and holidays. Even so, though, I still felt more like a visitor to their lives. I would arrive, take care of the family business, and then depart. The dialogue was always courteous, but superficial. There was no genuine connection, no warmth. Additionally, Emily and I never shared the strong sisterhood that many siblings do. She has always been the family's golden kid, the one who did everything right, went down the route my parents desired, and blended in flawlessly. I was the black sheep, the odd one out. They aren't awful individuals or anything, but the way they discreetly disparage me shows that they may be true bullies. You know how some small remarks can have a profound impact despite appearing innocuous at first glance? Yes, I would get that. I eventually came to the conclusion that it was simply preferable to avoid them as much as possible. Why place yourself in an uncomfortable and out-of-place situation? The problem is that when Jonathan joined us for Christmas dinner last year, I didn't feel totally invisible for the first time in a long time. My family has a way of making me feel as like I'm an outsider in my own house, and that I don't belong. I wasn't treated that way by Jonathan, though. Instead of treating me like the odd black sheep I often feel around my family, he was actually kind to me and spoke to me like a regular person. I didn't give it much thought at first. It was only basic politeness after all. However, Emily was very troubled by this, for some reason. It's not as though Jonathan and I were engaging in a meaningful private discussion. We simply discussed a variety of topics including travel, school, amusing incidents at work, and other everyday topics. However, Emily seemed strange about it right away. I tried to ignore the cold stare she kept giving me during supper. That is, until she addressed me directly later that night. I will always remember that. She said, "I know what you're doing," and drew me aside. "You're attempting to take my boyfriend even though you've always been envious of me." To be honest, I was stunned. Steal her man? I mean, even so, where did that originate? She refused to let it go even after I told her she was being foolish and laughed it off. She insisted that I was being too nice with Jonathan and that he was acting strangely around me. It was such a crazy charge that I wasn't even sure how to react. Where the hell was this coming from? Being the center of attention has always been Emily's thing. My folks adore her. She's the ideal person. She's their golden child, so I understand. But saying that I attempted to snatch her fiancé? Even for her, it was a new low. Like I normally do with her drama, I tried to ignore it. I assumed she was simply being insecure, or worried for whatever reason because we're not close anyhow. The problem is that after that night, things became strange amongst us all. I didn't believe Emily could have gotten any farther away. She seemed to be deliberately avoiding me now, even though we were never close in the first place. She would either act as though she couldn't be bothered, or give me one-word responses if I tried to speak with her. She would be glued to Jonathan's side during family get-togethers, as if she were claiming her space. It was absurd. Jonathan, however, pretended that nothing had changed. He remained courteous, amiable, and normal in my presence. What truly irritates me, I suppose, is how easily my family seems to agree with Emily. There were subtle clues, but no one ever spoke to me explicitly. Every time Emily and Jonathan were present, my mother would give me these strange stares. My dad, who is generally quite indifferent, began saying more about the value of connections and the necessity of family support. Everything was quite passive-aggressive. My anger increased as I gave it more thought. I've never been the kind to become entangled in the drama of others, much less that of my sister. Why would I suddenly get interested in Emily's fiancé when we almost ever speak outside of family gatherings? It was illogical. My grandparents informed me of Emily's engagement a few months later. Indeed, I was not even informed that my own sister was getting married. Finding out from my grandparents was a stomach punch, even if I wasn't exactly expecting her to send me a personalized invitation with love and glitter or anything at this point. You know, the kind that validates your preconceived notions about your family's lack of concern for you. I suppose I had been clinging to a sliver of hope that despite the stress and distance, she would still think of me as having been a part of this significant occasion in her life. Hey, we're sisters, right? I thought. We may not be close, but I am still her family. That was obviously too much to ask for, though. When I learned about the engagement, I kept quiet to Emily. I initially assumed that she might have forgotten to tell me or that she was simply preoccupied with wedding preparations. For some reason, I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt, even though I realized that sounds foolish. I assumed that she would ultimately give me a call or at the very least send me a last-minute invitation. However, days stretched into weeks and nothing happened. Crickets. Then I got an unexpected call from Emily. Since we hadn't actually spoken since that strange accusation over Christmas, I must admit that I was taken aback when her name appeared on my phone. I replied, attempting to sound informal, as if my own sister hadn't forgotten me entirely. She broke the news to him after a few awkward minutes of small talk. I'm not inviting you to the wedding. As I tried to take in what she had just said, I became silent for a moment. Even though I wasn't particularly eager to leave or anything, it still hurt to hear her say it aloud. When I asked her why, she gave me the most ridiculous explanation. I don't want you there because Jonathan has feelings for you. It will simply be uncomfortable. I had to laugh. Laughed aloud indeed. It was unbelievable to me that this was taking place. To begin with, Jonathan has no affection for me, and even if he did, I wouldn't have stood up during the ceremony to declare my unwavering love for him. I didn't even want to argue because it was all so absurd. I simply hung up after saying, "Have a great wedding and happy marriage." It didn't really matter to me whether or not I was a part of her special day because I didn't need that turmoil in my life. And to be honest, we weren't close. Emily and I were living in two entirely separate universes, and I had long since accepted this. However, I simply needed to let things out and perhaps gain some external insight. Am I the only one who thinks this whole thing is crazy? Have any of you had a similar situation? I would appreciate any guidance. Update 1. I need to write this all down while it's still fresh in my head since yesterday was completely crazy. Emily's rehearsal dinner descended into total mayhem, and I was somehow pulled into the center of it all. My phone started exploding when I was spending a typical Thursday night cuddled up with my laptop working on an assignment. I chose to ignore it at first. Lately, I've gotten fairly adept at that. However, in less than 10 minutes, I saw that I had 7 missed calls from my dad. My dad doesn't call more than once now. He's the kind that assumes you're busy if you don't respond right away and will try again later. 7 calls then? There was clearly a problem. He was trembling when I finally answered. He sounded like someone I had never heard before. "Michelle, you must visit the location immediately." Like a broken record, he said, "Right now." He just replied, "It's about Jonathan and Emily," when I inquired what was wrong. "Just come, please." His voice was so desperate that I was a little alarmed. But here's the thing. Did they really think that I would just drop everything and rush to their aid after all of the turmoil, allegations, and exclusion from the wedding? I told him just that. "Remember, Dad, I'm not attending this wedding." Emily was rather explicit about that. "Michelle, please," he replied. "Jonathan is unwilling to hold the wedding without your presence." I was halted in my tracks by that. "What?" My phone beeped with another call, this time from Mom. Before I could comprehend that bomb, she was crying. Really crying when I turned over. She kept saying, "Your sister needs you," as if she had forgotten how they had all treated me during the previous few months. Listening to her cry about sisterly love and family loyalty, when they had been okay without me until things went wrong, was weird. Emily then called in a shambled, hardly comprehensible voice. Jonathan apparently showed up for the rehearsal dinner and asked me right away where I was. He lost it when Emily informed him I wasn't invited, but it was more subdued and disappointed than furious. He declared that he could not marry someone who would treat their own sister in such a manner in front of their friends, the wedding party, and both families. Recounting it, Emily sobbed into the phone. He claimed that after observing their treatment of me, he couldn't be a member of a family that would reject someone in such a way. I was just like mom and dad, he stated, adding that he didn't want to be around such poisonous behavior. If I'm being honest, a significant portion of me felt validated. At last, someone had witnessed what I had endured for years. In fact, someone had spoken up and declared that it was unacceptable. Emily wasn't finished, though. In between sobbing, she began outlining this intricate plan for me to visit the location and explained that there was only a major misunderstanding and that I was the one who decided not to attend the wedding, claiming that it was entirely my idea. She persisted in repeating, "We can fix this. Simply come and inform Jonathan that you have no intention of attending the wedding. Inform him that you were never left out. Michelle, please, I can't let him go." It was all breathtakingly audacious. It's absurd that after months of me behaving like a man-stealing villain and being told outright that I wasn't allowed to her wedding because her fiancé could be attracted to me, she wanted me to lie in order to keep her connection intact after making me feel like trash in my own family. I let her cry on the other end of the line for a long time without saying anything. Then, as coolly as I could, I said, "I won't lie to you, Emily. You are now dealing with the repercussions of your decisions to ignore me and treat me as though I didn't exist. Fixing it is not my responsibility." "But he'll hear you out!" She almost let out a scream. "He believes in you!" I answered, "Perhaps he trusts me because I've never given him a reason not to. Perhaps he has doubts about your true identity because of anything he perceives in the way you have treated me. In any case, I won't be attending the event, and I won't tell lies to improve your reputation." She was still complaining when I hung up. I then made myself a cup of tea, switched off my phone entirely, and took a seat to truly think about what had just transpired. My phone continued to light up with notifications over the course of the following several hours. I examined it and found voicemails from my parents, missed calls from Emily's pals, and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The entire family seemed to have banded together to try to coerce me into cleaning up Emily's mess. But what do you know? For the first time in my life, I was very sure that avoiding them was the proper thing to do. Jonathan alone had been able to see through their actions. Not because of anything I said or did, but because of how they treated me. He had come to that conclusion. And to be honest, that seemed like the fullest confirmation I could have hoped for. Last night, I went to bed without using my phone, and I slept better than I have in months. For once, let them handle the consequences of their own behavior. I'm done cleaning up other people's crap and being the family scapegoat. My grandparents, who are the only relatives I still communicate with, informed me this morning that Jonathan is not returning calls from Emily or my parents. It seems that he has informed his family that the wedding is final. My parents are working feverishly to contain the damage. Emily is inconsolable, and I'm just sitting here at last content with my choice to keep my distance. I realize this is lengthy, but I had to say it all. I appreciate all of the comments on my previous post that affirmed my choice to keep my distance from my family. You were okay. Sometimes it's best to take a back seat and let others deal with the fallout from their own behavior. Update 2. Many of you inquired about my early years and the reasons behind my prolonged estrangement from my family. Since it's a somewhat weighty story, I didn't delve into it in my first post, but in light of recent events, I believe this is a good moment to explore some of it. The problem is that I suffer from social anxiety. I always had the feeling that something was wrong with me as a child, but I was never able to articulate it. However, my parents were traditionalists who thought mental health conditions were merely pretexts. They would frequently say things like, "You need to toughen up," or "You're just being dramatic." They would label me weak or lazy if I ever showed signs of anxiety or a panic attack, as if I was choosing to feel that way. When I look back, I can see a lot of warning signs. I had this big presentation for English class when I was 15. The thought of standing in front of 30 students was a recipe for a social anxiety disorder. I had trouble sleeping the night before, and I felt physically ill the morning of. I begged to stay at home and informed my parents. My father's reaction: "Your nervousness won't cause life to stop. Quit making a huge deal out of everything." I ultimately experienced a severe panic attack in front of the class. My voice began breaking. Some children even started chuckling, and my hands were shaking so much that I was unable to grip my notes. The room seemed to be whirling, but I was unable to go out. Rather than offering consolation, my mother simply remarked, "See, you made it through. All that drama was in vain." Everything was made worse by Emily, who was the ideal sister. She was the student body president, the debate team captain, and pretty much everything else that I couldn't be due to my anxiety. When she had large gatherings of her friends, people would remark that I was the weird sister who never came out of her room. I heard Emily say to her pals once, "Yeah, she's just antisocial. She believes that she is too good to be with anyone." My life changed when I was in college. My first semester was a total meltdown for me. Being away from home, adjusting to new social circumstances, and attempting to balance my anxiety while attending classes became too much to handle. I recall feeling like I was dying while I sat in my dorm room gasping for air. I was almost dragged to the college counseling center by my roommate, who, bless her, saw something was really wrong. The first person who truly listened to me was Dr. Martinez, whom I met there. She didn't urge me to toughen up or minimize my emotions. Rather, she assisted me in comprehending my condition. Dr. Martinez suggested seeing a psychiatrist for a proper diagnosis after a few sessions. It was like finally giving the monster I'd been battling my entire life a name when I received that diagnosis of social anxiety disorder. It wasn't seeking attention or being dramatic, as my family had always insisted. It was a legitimate ailment, and more significantly, it was treatable. The sessions of treatment opened my eyes. I learned from Dr. Martinez that my family's actions were not only unsupportive, but also purposefully damaging. She gave me advice on setting limits, advocating for myself, and identifying harmful behaviors. At that point, I began to intentionally distance myself from my family. What really bothers me, though, is that my parents totally rejected my diagnosis when I tried to explain it to them. "These doctors are just trying to make money by labeling everything a disease," my mother genuinely said. "I was merely using big words to justify my antisocial behavior," Emily added, rolling her eyes. I made one final attempt to explain things to them last Thanksgiving, before all of this wedding turmoil began. I had prepared an entire speech on social anxiety, complete with research and figures. "Michelle, when are you going to stop making excuses and start living in the real world?" My dad interrupted me mid-sentence. I came to the realization that they would never change at that point. They would never make an effort to comprehend. They had an unchangeable perception of me as the challenging kid, the dramatic one, the problem. And what do you know? It was strangely liberating to realize that. It made it easier for me to cease looking for their understanding or acceptance. In retrospect, I can see how this tendency directly contributed to the wedding scenario, my parents' hasty acceptance of Emily's story without even challenging it, and Emily's rapid leap to believe I was stealing her fiancé. It's all a part of their long-held belief that I'm the one who causes difficulty and should be managed. Jonathan saw right through this. He observed how they handled me, how they minimized my emotions, and how they used me as the blame for everything. And he called it out for what it was: poisonous conduct, in contrast to everyone else in my family's social circle who simply accepted their own version of reality. I suppose I'm attempting to convey that this wedding drama wasn't an isolated incident, the result of years of family dynamics in which I was consistently portrayed as the bad guy, the problem child, and the one who needed to be fixed. Perhaps that's why Jonathan's choice feels so righteous to me. Someone else finally noticed what I've been going through for years. Yes, that is the backstory that many of you requested. It clarifies why I'm not in a rush to make repairs right now. I've spent far too many years attempting to change how my family views me, to get their understanding, and to gain their acceptance. I finished that. Accepting that certain individuals, even members of your family, will never understand or accept you is sometimes the healthiest thing you can do. Update 3. A month has passed since everything went wrong, and I must now reveal the last portion of this tale. At least now I can say that what began as a wedding drama is really finished. Even though it has grown into something I never could have predicted, Emily lost everything when her wedding was called off. My new phone number was somehow obtained by her, and she shared it with everyone she knew. I was suddenly inundated with hundreds of hateful comments from strangers, her acquaintances, and distant family members. Guilt-tripping and downright intimidation were among the threats. The vandalism followed. Classic Emily, who used to do this to girls she detested in high school, was the first to leave eggs in my car. She escalated when that failed to get the desired response. I can't even remember how many times I discovered my mailbox ruined, my car vandalized, or my apartment door covered in offensive notes. She cut all 4 of my car tires and left a threatening note in her distinctive handwriting, which was the last straw. My parents consciously chose to ignore Emily's actions during all of this. Girls will be girls, or you need to be more understanding of your sister's pain, was their standard response to every event. They dismissed it as Emily just wanting to talk even after I showed them security camera footage of her attempting to break into my flat. However, I was ready because of this incredible Reddit community, especially those who suggested that I install security cameras and record everything. I learned from the attorney you suggested that this constituted criminal harassment and vandalism rather than just family drama. Using witness accounts, video evidence, photos, and hundreds of threatening messages, we created a solid case. Emily ultimately realized she had gone too far when my lawyer provided our evidence, along with the cease and desist notice. Her attempted break-in was captured on security tape, which was especially damaging. She attempted to bargain through her own attorney, stating that if I dropped everything, she would cover the damages. However, I declined. This was about accountability and penalties, not money. The court case proceeded quickly and decisively. Emily was accused of attempting to break and enter, criminal harassment, and vandalism. She was given a permanent restraining order, required therapy, and a 1-year suspended sentence. Given the deliberate nature of her conduct and the substantial evidence of her increasing behavior, the judge was especially severe. My parents' response to the decision was expected. For destroying your sister's life over a few pranks, they accused me of being callous. In fact, they advised me to just move away if I felt unsafe after I told them that Emily had repeatedly harassed me, damaged my belongings, and attempted to break into my house. I never intended to speak with them again after that. An out-of-court settlement was reached in the civil litigation. In addition to the damages for emotional distress and lost wages, Emily had to pay for all the harm she had caused. Her campaign of harassment on social media has cost me a number of freelancing businesses. More significantly, the settlement included a non-contact clause that prohibits our parents from serving as middlemen or flying monkeys any longer. According to my lawyer, Emily and my parents' concerns about their reputations played a role in the speedy settlement. It turns out that their concern for the opinions of their country club pals is far greater than their concern for doing the right thing. Since then, I have relocated to a new apartment in a building that is secure and under constant observation. My social media accounts have been closed down. My contact information has been totally updated, and my clients have been incredibly understanding of the situation. Someone who heard about my situation and was impressed by my handling of it even extended an offer of employment to me. The most unexpected result of it all. For the first time in my life, I feel liberated. The expectations and criticisms of my family are not weighing on me. I am no longer the scapegoat. I'm just Michelle creating my own life according to my own rules. I'm neither the dramatic nor the challenging child. My life was actually altered by the Reddit community who helped me through everything. In court, your recommendations on documentation and security precautions were crucial. When I started to doubt myself, your encouraging remarks kept me going, and your accounts of similar situations made me understand I wasn't alone. Remember that sharing DNA does not give someone the right to mistreat you if you're dealing with toxic family members. Walking away and letting them deal with the fallout from their actions is sometimes the healthiest course of action. It's about establishing limits and demanding respect, not about getting even. With therapy, my social anxiety is improving, but it's still there. It turns out that a lot of it was related to the continuous criticism and gaslighting I experienced as a child. Who would have thought that removing poisonous individuals might be such a successful treatment? I will no longer be updated now that this phase of my life is genuinely over. I'm concentrating on my education, profession, and creating a new network of chosen family members for support. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. You gave me the confidence to leave and the strength to advocate for myself. Living well is said to be the best kind of retaliation. The best closure, I would add, is knowing that you have finally advocated for yourself. I'm tired of being used as a scapegoat or victim by others. I've taken control of my life and will never look back. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of family drama, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Sleepless Stories. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next drama-filled episode. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode on Sleepless Stories.